Now, Baruch Hashem, I have smicha. I have a few smichas, but this is my smicha. Where she writes, Levi Yitzchak bli ein Hore a ganzer Bocher. Levi Yitzchak a ganzer Bocher. I was only 3 years old at the time. Okay, bebirchas kol tov asayim, tereshe shleimim v'atzlachaschem, and her signature.
I'm Yossi Kamen. Welcome to Among Chsidim by Der Herr, an ongoing upbringing about life as a chassid, our vibrant connection with the Rebbe, and inspired living shaped by the way he teaches us each and every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Keren HaChamish. Keren HaChamish is a fund that was started by the Rebbe right after Chap Shvat in honor of the Rebbetzin. Stay tuned later in the episode to hear more about it. Okay, Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Garelik, how are you?
Baruch Hashem. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, and today is a special podcast that we're doing. It's not visible in the on the screen, on the cameras, but we have an audience of many Bachrim that are watching us have this conversation as part of the Yom Iyun, Yud Shvat of the Vat Hamidiyat Tamimim. So it's a special edition. Shekayach for being here.
My pleasure.
Okay. So I want to begin and ask you, many people have their own story, but then there's a story that comes before them. So you have illustrious fathers, illustrious Zaydas, and maybe we can begin that way. I was thinking perhaps we should start with talking about your famed Zayda, Reb Shalom Posner. How does that sound to you?
Excellent. There's plenty what to say about my Zaydi. Just by introduction, I have two Zaydis, my father's father and my mother's father. So you're starting with my mother's father, that's Reb Shalom. But my other Zaydi was also Rabbi Levi Garelik, and they both learned in Lubavitch. My Zayda Chaim Meir ended up later in Israel, which we'll talk about later if you want to. My Zayda Reb Shalom is as follows. His Zayda, Shalom's Zayda, his name was Zusha Posner. My uncle Zusha Posner is named after his Zayda. His Zayda and his brother came to America le'erech in the 1880s. Their son, a whole bunch of sons, but one of them, his name was Yitzchak Zalman. Yitzchak Zalman was a bocher, and he saw that here in America he cannot be Frum. He went back to Russia. As a matter of fact, Rabbi Jacobson, Rabbi Yisrael Jacobson, in his Sefer, Zikaron Livnei Yisrael, he writes the history of Lubavitch in America. He remembered my Zaydi's Zayda from, he was actually in Rusland, he was a schuster, he was a shoemaker. He came to America and he made a shoe called the Posner shoe. I have one at home, an original box called the Posner shoe from 1930. And Rabbi Jacobson writes in there, they were mehrere dicker Gevirim, but his son went back to Russia. He went back to Russia, and my Zaydi was born Tafresh Samach Beis, same year as the Rebbe. When he was about 17, 18, his father, Rabbi Jacobson actually has this story in his Zikaron Livnei Yisrael. He was doing some business with some goyim, and they got into a fight with the Yidden, and they took the Yidden and put them on a raft on the river. They blew it up, and everybody sunk. My Zaydi was then a bocher, and he waited a few days by the water. When the bodies came up, so then he recognized his father. He put him on his shoulder, and he brought him to Kever Yisrael. Oh. Earlier, in Tafresh Ayin Hey, this is just an introduction. I was once walking with my Zaydi Reb Shalom in front of 770, right after my Chasen in Tafshim Mem Hey, and all of a sudden he stopped by 770 and he looks up at the building, and I saw he went somewhere else, and he tells me, Levi, Heintike Woch was after Pesach. Heintike Woch this week is 70 Jahr von mein Niskabel. It's 70 years from my Niskabel. Niskabel means accepted.
In Lubavitch.
Lubavitch. Was heißt? Hundreds and thousands of Bochum came to Lubavitch. They weren't accepted. Most boys who came, that wanted to be accepted in Lubavitch, were not accepted. Chanya Morozov came in, Ranat, Tishrei Ranat, he came. And his whole group that came with him, nobody was accepted. He was the only one by Mazel, a whole long story. But Mezedi had a Mazel. He came the last Zman of Lubavitch, the last semester, because the Rebbe Rashab left Lubavitch in Tofresh Ayin Vov, right after Tishrei, in 1916. So Tofresh Ayin Hey was the last semester. Mazed was born in Samar Beis. Right after his bar mitzvah was Ayin Hey. And he did not need to go through a test in order to get his niskabel. Why? Because he came from a city called Ramen. In Ramen, the mashpia was Rabbi der Masmid. Anybody who came with a zettel for Rabbi der Masmid didn't have to go through any test automatically. So Mazedi was in Lubavitch in Tofresh Ayin Hey. Then later was the story with his father. Tofresh Pei, 4 years later, when the Rebbe Rashab passed away, he wasn't there in Rostov. He was in Rostov for Tishrei. He told me a lot of stories about that Tishrei. Stam, just an interesting point. He told me that Sukkos, he saw it himself. The Rebbe was sitting in the Sukkah, so geplochet aregen.
You're talking about the Rebbe Rashab?
The Rebbe Rashab, yeah. Mazedi always said the Rebbe, he didn't say which Rebbe. The Mazedi was by the Rebbe Rashab, by the Frierdiker Rebbe, and by the Rebbe. He always said the Rebbe. This is a very famous story that I'm going to get back to the story of the Sukkah in a minute. That he used to say, the Rebbe ist einmal reingekommen zu sagen, der Meimer, aber der Rebbe noch nicht gekommen. Und alle haben gefragt, wo ist der Rebbe? Aber der Rebbe steht dort nur wart. Back and forth. The story is, in Lubavitch, the way it used to work is, the Rebbe Rashab said a Meimer every Friday night. And the Meimer used to be Friday night before Kegavna. After Kaddish, they would stop. They would go to the center of the room. There used to be a mem, 4 tables. And there were 2 chairs on the 2 sides, and inside. The Rebbe Rashab would sit in one, the Frierdiker Rebbe in the other. And the Rebbe Rashab would look into the eyes of the Frierdiker Rebbe during the whole Maimer. That's how the whole Maimer went, for about 45 minutes to an hour. But one time, so usually Frierdiker Rebbe used to come first, and then the Rebbe Rashab would come. But one time, somehow, the Rebbe Rashab came, and the Frierdiker Rebbe wasn't there yet. So the Rebbe Rashab was waiting till the Frierdiker Rebbe came. So that's how Mazedi said the story. The Rebbe is gekommen, aber the Rebbe noch nicht gekommen. You know, anyways, Mazedi used to say always the Rebbe. So in Ayin Hey, he was accepted in Lubavitch. Tofresh Pei, he was there for Tishrei. And
you're saying a story in the Sukkah.
So at Tofresh Pei, in the Sukkah, he says, he says, aber auf den Seat von Rebbe, on the Rebbe's place, in the gegangen Regen. He says, they all saw it. On the place of the Rebbe Rashab, there was absolutely no rain. Anyways, that was still Tofresh Pei. Then Tofresh Pei Beis, he was in Poltava. He went to jail. If you want, I'll tell you later the story.
He was married.
No, not yet. He became a chosen Tofresh Pei Hey, 1915. Actually, my Bobby was at Zeitlin, famous Baron Lezer Zeitlin, a sister. Her other sister was already married to Reb Chatzke Fagin, the secretary of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Unfortunately, they all got killed by the Nazis. But my Zayde was a chosen in Tofresh Pei Hey. My Bobby's brother had already moved to Israel. He was one of the Chalutzim, one of the pioneers, the Zionist in Yemot. You know, they were starting the whole Zionist movement. So he was able to send a visa for my Bobby and her mother to get out from Russia. And they, in turn, sent to my Zaydi a visa to come to Eretz Yisrael. And that's how they all ended up in Eretz Yisrael. My grandparents got married in Eretz Yisrael.
But what was the matzav then? Were Chassidim trying to leave Russia, or they were supposed to stay? Like, what was the whole situation then?
All the time, Chassidim tried to get out of Russia. From the early time of the Rebbe Rashab. Russia was not a good place for a Yid.
So the fact that the Rabbeim remained and all the Chassidim remained was not necessarily by choice? Is that what you're saying?
It wasn't by choice, no. The Rebbe Rashab had an idea of we know we have only one picture of the Rebbe Rashab.
The passport.
Why? Because it was the passport, because he was planning to go to Eretz Yisrael. But then it changed, and if the Frierdiker Rebbe would have been able to leave Russia earlier, I'm sure he would have done it earlier. Jene Zeiten, you couldn't, there was no way you could leave Russia. It was a ganze Geschäft how to leave. That's why. So the Rebbe Rashab, the Frierdiker Rebbe did not let them leave. The Rebbe also till the 70s, 80s, the Rebbe, there were many people, the Rebbe didn't let them leave Russia.
There was a point that Chassidim were encouraged to stay.
Some.
Because there were other Yidden that left right when communism started. They just left.
Those who were able to, left. The problem was, everybody was afraid to leave because you're going to come to America, you're going to become frei. You're going to come to Eretz Yisrael, you're going to become frei. My great-uncle, my grandmother's brother, I remember him very well, I met him in Eretz Yisrael. When he came to Eretz Yisrael, he went a Frum bocher. He fasted on the boat going to Eretz Yisrael for 8 days. Almost fast. He had potatoes, whatever, but he came to Eretz Yisrael and they told him, you want to join the Chalutzim, you want to become part of the pioneers, you have to take your tefillin and throw them in the sea. By the time they came to Eretz Yisrael, my Baba, my Zayda, he was totally frei. And my Baba's mother, her son, she begged him, L'chol ha'pachas Yom Kippur, come in shul, come to shul. He walked halfway and he went back home. No, everybody knew, you leave Russia, is uis. Here in America, you know, yet thousands of shuls. Nusach in Maplewood, the Nusach Ashkenaz shul is whatever, and the Nusach Harishul is a Reformed temple, Anshe Lubavitch. That's a Zicher. Here in America, everybody became, it was over. There was no way. That's doch my Elter Zayde went back to Russia as a Bacher.
Right.
Anyways, so then my Zayde had in America grandparents, uncles and aunts, while he was in Eretz Yisrael, and he sent a letter to his Zaydi if he could send them an affidavit. An affidavit is that why should America allow refugees? They have somebody in America who's going to take care of them, so then they could let them. There's many letters, for example, the Rebbe's father, Rebbe Levi Yitzchak. The Frierdiker Rebbe worked at the shul in Boston, sent an invitation to Rebbe Levi Yitzchak, this way they would be able to bring it to America. Lapella didn't work out, but that's what an affidavit is, that someone in America is taking responsibility for you. You're not going to just be on welfare. So my Zaydi wrote to him, I'll send you an affidavit. The only thing is you have to be careful, because if you come to America, you're going to have to cut two things. The board and the situk. Here in America, it's not going to work. So my Bobby and Zaydi decided they're staying in Eretz Yisrael. Staying in Eretz Yisrael. They were poor, whatever, but they're staying in Eretz Yisrael. Vahi hayoim, Tafresh Petes, Frierdiker Rebbe came to Eretz Yisrael. Frierdiker Rebbe came to Eretz Yisrael. So my Zaydi was a Tomim from Lubavitch. So he was one of the people who was Mishamish, the Frierdiker Rebbe, during that trip. So he asked the Frierdiker Rebbe, my Zaydi asked the Frierdiker Rebbe for a bracha, for some kind of a job that he was going to get. And the Frierdiker Rebbe told my Zaydi, Shalom, do for in America. No, the Rebbe said, do for in America. So he right away sent a letter to his Zaydi. And he said, I'm planning to come anyway, so send me an affidavit. So the Frierdiker Rebbe was in Eretz Yisrael in Tammuz Av. By Tishrei, he was already here in America, the famous Tishrei. My Zaydi and Bobby got there around Kislev time.
To New York.
To New Jersey. New Jersey, the way my Bobby would say. They got to New Jersey, and mid-Tamol, it only took a few weeks, and my Bobby saw, she had two sons at that time. My uncle Zalman Posner, and Label. They're the Palestinians, because Israel then was called Palestine. So in their passport, it says they were born in Palestine. We used to call them the PLOs. Anyways, so they were about 4 years old, 4 and 3, or 5 and 4, when they came to America. And my Bobby saw there's no way that they could stay Frum. Now, so she wanted to go and ask a bracha from the Frierdiker Rebbe. The problem was that in that trip, the Frierdiker Rebbe did not give yechidus to women.
The trip in America.
When that first trip the Frierdiker Rebbe came, he only gave yechidus.
The whole year?
The whole year. Only if it was a group of women. But privat.
Bechlal, the Rabbeim had yechidus with women?
Yeah, the Rebbe had.
No, the Rebbe I know. But
so
I'm saying the Rebbe
Rashab. The curtain used
the
to be
Rebbe
up.
Rashab.
I don't know. The other Rebbe, I know Leike Karasik was by the Rebbe.
And then the Futterfast was with his grandmother.
Yeah, there were definitely stories, but I'm not sure exactly how.
Okay.
But one thing is sure, when the Frierdiker Rebbe was here in America, only groups. Her mazel was that who was the secretary with the Frierdiker Rebbe? Chatzah Fagin, her brother-in-law. He came to America. So she told Chatzah, if you see any possibility that I could go into the Frierdiker Rebbe, let me know. A couple of days later, she gets a call. Those days, the telephones were these, like that. People don't know what telephones are anymore. And in the Chatzah calls her, says, come right now. I think that the Frierdiker Rebbe then stayed, believe it or not, on Brooklyn Avenue.
We recently wrote in the Daher an article about it.
Oh, yeah?
There was a house. There was a special house.
Sure.
I can't remember.
I think it's still there.
I think it was in New York Avenue.
I'm not sure. I know it was right.
There were two houses.
But at that time, 770 was still a grass. There was no building there yet. The building was built in 1933. That's 4 years later. Anyways, so she right away came running from New Jersey with the two kids. She came to the house where the Frierdiker Rebbe was. And she waited. All of a sudden, the door opened up to the Frierdiker Rebbe's room. Chacha came out, and he saw my Baba. So what did he do? He walked away and left the door open. Didn't say anything. My grandma didn't ask any questions. She took the kids, she charged into the room of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and she told the Frierdiker Rebbe, wie will mir der Urvater wenn jüdische Kinder?
Why didn't your grandfather
My grandfather was at the shchitta.
Ah, he was
So he was at the shchitta also. The kam that he made parnassa. We had a cousin that helped out, whatever. But he was at the shchitta. She couldn't wait. She couldn't call him and does it. It just wouldn't work.
So your grandmother asked the Frierdiker Rebbe.
My grandmother told the Frierdiker Rebbe, wie will mir der Urvater wenn jüdische Kinder? How are we going to raise our Jewish kids? She says the Frierdiker Rebbe was sitting without his sirtuk, just with his gilet, and the talis ausgespreht, the laskotten ausgespreht, as very bright, with a big smile. And when she said that, the Frierdiker Rebbe said, in the family there's different versions, but I can only tell you the way I heard it from my Bobby. The Rebbe said, Ihr werdet der Urvater wenn schöne jüdische chassidische Kinder. You're going to raise over here very nice, beautiful, Yiddish, Chassidish, Jewish Chassidish children. She heard that, she ran out again. She didn't want to get anything different, and she left it at that. So this was in New Jersey. By the way, there was a journal called the Hatomim. The Hatomim came out in Poland. In those 10 years that the Frierdiker Rebbe was in Poland and Riga, between Tafresh Tzadik and Taf Shin, those 10 years, about 7 or 8 came out. The one at the end didn't come out because of the war. So if you look, then they printed them all in one book. If you look at page 500, you'll see a ha'ara from Shalom Posner, Linden, New Jersey. I found by my Zaidi an invitation to Rebbetzin Sheinas Chasene, the Rebbetzins younger sister with their Mendel Ornstein. 2 invitations. One, the regular invitation, and one, an invitation at Anshe in Linden, New Jersey.
Oh, so Frierdiker Rebbe was sending to America.
Sending to America invitations. Oh. So the regular invitation is the regular, and the other one is obviously to those who can't come, they should in their place say L'chaim, etc. Just Vashgacha Pratis, I have a daughter, her name is Sheina, after the Rebbe Sheina. She married a Menachem Mendel. So I framed these 2 things and I gave it to them as a present.
Which is something that I want to talk to you about later. You're naming your kids for the Rebbe's mishpacha. Okay, we'll get there.
Plenty what to talk.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so then my Babi Zaydu were here in America. When the Frierdiker Rebbe came to America in Tafshin, right, 10 years later, my Babi and Zaydi at that time were living in Chicago because my Zaydi didn't have Parnasse, and Rabbi Yisrael Jacobson, found him a job to be a shamish in the famous Bnei Reuven shul in Chicago. The Frierdiker Rebbe came off the boat, so the most of Lubavitch, I'm talking about the money of Lubavitch at that time was in Chicago. There was even a Havamina that Frierdiker Rebbe was going to move to Chicago, not even to Brooklyn, to New York. But anyways, so a few of the people from Chicago went to greet the Frierdiker Rebbe. My Zaidi didn't have a penny to his name. He didn't have enough money to buy a train ticket to go to New York to see the Rebbe. So he told the guys, whoever was going then, do me a favor, when you see the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, give him regards from Shalom Posner. When they approached the Frierdiker Rebbe and told him that they have regards from Shalom Posner, it kent them. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said, Shalom idach meiner. That was the lashon of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Throughout those few months, my Bobby and my Zaidi collected penny to penny to penny to penny to penny. So in the summer, my Zaidi was able to go and visit the Frierdiker Rebbe in New York. 2 years later, Tafshin Beis, the Frierdiker Rebbe went to a visit to Chicago. Because Chicago is a story for itself. My Bobby cooked for the Frierdiker Rebbe when he was there for almost a week. And we have today actually the silverware that the Frierdiker Rebbe used. And we use it by the Einiklach, by all the weddings, bin Cheder HaYichud, that's what they use for the... Plus, because she cooked for the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe's Rebbetzin sent my Bobby a present, a set of 12, silverware. Spoons, forks, everything. So this was all divided according to the family. But that was the Tafshin Beis. So my Zaidi was in Chicago. So when he went to Yechidus, to the Frierdiker Rebbe, so he told the Frierdiker Rebbe that he has now also an option to buy a hardware store. So he wants a bracha, him and somebody else. So the Frierdiker Rebbe told him, Shalom, do for in Pittsburgh and Efna Yeshiva. You go to Pittsburgh and open up a yeshiva.
How old was he?
My Zaydi was born Tafresh Samach Beis, and this was Tafshin Beis, so 50.
So at 50 years,
I'm paid 40.
so at 40 years old, if the Rebbe is telling him, okay, abandon all these parnasa things,
Yeah,
go
to
open up a
Pittsburgh.
yeshiva.
Go to Pittsburgh. Now, interesting is, I was always under the impression that he went that summer in Tafshin Beis. A couple of years ago, I went to Chicago to speak, and I said this story, and I found in my Zayda stuff something very interesting. I found a Shana Teva that the Fiedike Rebbe sent to the Bnei Reuven Shul for that Rosh Hashanah when he came to America in Tafshin. And it still had the scotch tapes, that was hanging on the wall. I guess my Zaydi took it off after Yom Tov and he put it away. So mamish original. I went to speak in Chicago for Yitzhak Kislev. So I figured, let me bring them a nice present. And I took that and I put it in a nice frame. When I came then to speak, so I came in with this thing. Nobody knew what's inside. And I told him, it's Rosh Hashanah, right? Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah L'chsidus, right? So I got to do something about Rosh Hashanah. So I invited Rabbi Hertz, the Rav in Chicago, the Rav of the community, that he should open up, and everybody was standing there. Anyways, Lapel, when he saw it, so he read it out loud. It's a Shana Teva, Mamish, and then he got very emotional. And I asked him, why are you so emotional? And in public. And he said, because Chicago had hundreds and thousands of letters from the Fiedike Rebbe. Everything's gone. No one knows where anything is. And here, finally, they have an original Tu B'nei Reuven Shul, etc. So it's hanging there in the lobby, where it says that this is found in Rabbi Posner's archive, who was the Shamash of B'nei Reuven Shul in Tafresh. Anyways, so Tafshin Beis. So then when I spoke, so I told him the story that the Fiedike Rebbe told me, the Frum in Pittsburgh and Yeshiva. And I was sure that it was that summer, Tafshin Beis. Afterwards came to me Mr. Kasovsky. Olav Shalom just passed away not too long ago. And he told me, Rabbi Garelik, he went to Tafshin Gimel, 1943. So I said, how do you know? He says, how do I know? I was in his class then. He was my teacher. And what happened was, the Fiedike Rebbe told him to go to Pittsburgh. This was in Shvat, Shvat. And, Taki, Shvat. And the teacher who taught that class right after Pesach decided he's not continuing to teach them anymore. After Pesach, it's only 1 month, there's no yeshiva. He wasn't a chassid, he was and Mazedi couldn't watch how all these kids are going to be without a teacher. So he stayed and taught them for a year and a half.
Which school is this?
One of the
local
schools there that was connected to Bnei Reuven somehow. So he stayed for another year, and he went in Tafshin Gimel in the summer. When I started looking at the letters, I see that he went to Tafshin Gimel. Anyways, it took a year. Before he left, he'd resigned from the shul, because the Rebbe told him, the Fiedike Rebbe told him, go to. So he went over to the president of the shul, and he told him that he's resigning. She said, Farvas, what's wrong? What? She says, no, I'm going to Pittsburgh. He says, why are you going to Pittsburgh? He says, I'm going to Pittsburgh to open up a yeshiva. So the president told him like this, when David wachsen groß, wird in Pittsburgh sein a yeshiva. When here grass will grow, that's when there'll be a yeshiva in Pittsburgh. That was very encouraging, for my Zayda, besides all the other problems that there were those days. Anyways, he went to Pittsburgh, my bubby, and they started. Actually, the yeshiva started a year before. Rebbe Mottel Oltein, who later was in the Bronx, he was a bacher still. He went to Pittsburgh first. Those days it was musical chairs, all the were going from one place to another for a few years, and you
mentioned Bnei Reuven. I think Ishadav Groner was the Bnei Reuven. Rabbi Lieberman was there.
Groner was, but Lieberman.
It was a lot of musical chairs.
No, but I'm saying a guy like Yitzhak Groner, who later went to Australia, he was in different places in the United States. Herschel Fogelman was in different places. The way Herschel Fogelman would put it, Rabbi Herschel Fogelman, Harry Fogelman, he was in Worcester. But he was in different places first. He says, until Tafshin Yud, it was musical chairs. Tafshin Yud, the music stopped. Wherever you were, that's it. Anybody who wanted to go further, he used to come to the Rebbe and say, the Fiedike Rebbe used to send me here. He says, the Fiedike Rebbe sent you where you are now. You want to change? Go to the Fiedike Rebbe. Don't come to me.
On Yud Shvat Tafshin Yud Aleph, in the shlichus, that's what the Rebbe says, that all the shlichus in that the Fiedike Rebbe had Garelik should continue. I mean, he said it publicly.
That's it. No, but that's when musical chairs, it was over. Yeah, richtig. Anyways, so my Zayde opened up the yeshiva. He continued this. Rabbi Olten started a little bit, but then my Zayde, of course, took it to the next level. When the first Yechidus, they came to the Frierdiker Rebbe, and of course my Bobby and Zaidi told the Frierdiker Rebbe that it's very, very hard. Sai begashmis, sai beruchnis, everything. Frierdiker Rebbe said, this again, I'm telling you the way my Bobby told me the story. The Frierdiker Rebbe said, ihr sollt ackern und sehen. You should plow and seed. Und ich will gießen Tränen, as es soll wachsen. And I will shed tears that it should grow. Once the Rebbe said that, gange weiter, there was. So this was my Bobby and Zaidi. Then came Tafshin Yud. And of course, my Zaidi came to New York, to Shvat. Motzei Shabbos, he found out that my mother was a little girl. And she told me she remembers how my Zaidi made Avdoladam, mit ungeschwollen Augen, she was crying like crazy. He came to New York, he came for the next morning. And he was one of the people who had the shlichus to be by the Tare of the Frierdiker Rebbe. And he got the left hand. The hand that the Rebbe used to put on film. He got the left hand. That was basically, and then the rest is history.
The rest is history. Okay, so before we go to your parents, we have to go to the other side, the Chaim.
Yeah, there's still plenty to talk about Shalom. I mean, I have a lot of other stories, but this is just Bekitzer Nimrat, eh? A lot of people asked, when my Bobby passed away, this was in Tafshin Nun. The Rebbe was out there by the Levi. First of all, the Rebbe after Tafshin Lamed Ches, after 1978, the Rebbe stopped going out to Levi's. The Rebbe used to, till Tafshin Lamed Ches, till the heart attack, the Rebbe used to go out to every single Levi that used to come in front of 770. The Levi used to come in front of 770. Rabbi Groner would go into the Rebbe, tell him that the Levi is here, the funeral. The Rebbe would come out. The Rebbe would walk on the sidewalk, cross the street, go till the fire hydrant. It's that fire hydrant is still there in front of it. Now it's in front of the museum. Those days it was in front of 796. The Rebbe would stop. The cars would go. Once all the cars were gone, the Rebbe would come back, wash his hands outside, and then go inside, go into the Zal. The way, just for historical purposes, the way it used to work is, you walk into the Zal, on the right side there's a table with benches, and over here there's a table of benches. We used to take away that table on the right side, the one under the clock, take away the table, the place was empty, there was just a bench. And the Rebbe would come in, would sit down on the beginning of the bench, his hands were wet, because you don't dry your hands after a Levaya. And the Rebbe would say, Yesh, I guess it was Yesh V'Seisa, that's the minig. And the Rebbe would move from one place to another on the bench, because you're supposed to move 7 times. I saw it dozens of times, till Tav Shalom Ches. And the Rebbe would, move there. So, but the Rebbe would stand by the fire hydrant for 10 minutes max. Once all the cars are
That's
gone.
a long time, 10 minutes.
I said maximum.
Yeah.
Less. The cars to go by took 2 minutes, another 2 minutes, whatever. By my Bobby, I didn't see it because I went to the Levaya, to the airport. The Rebbe was out there for over a half hour, or 40 minutes or something. There's a video.
The video of the whole thing, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you can see how Rabbi Groner goes over to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe continues looking. And everybody wanted to know why. I am not going to tell you why, because I have no idea why, and nobody knows why. But one thing that I will say is, Tafshin Yud, after Yud Shvat, this was somewhere 3-4 months later. I don't know if it was in Iyar, in Sivan. The Rebbe wanted my uncle, Label Posner, which also just passed away, unfortunately, to go on shlichus to California, which he did, as a bocher. And that's why he wasn't here, Yud Shvat Tafshin Yud Aleph, because he was in California. He got married 2 weeks later. The Rebbe was the first one, the Rebbe was B'Zat Gedushin, was by him. But he wanted to come for Yud Shvat.
The first one after the
Nesius. After the Nesius.
I think the Rebbe didn't do it, the whole Avelis.
Yeah, the whole Avelis didn't do it. Yeah. Before the Nesius there was, but another parsha. So, and the Rebbe wanted those days to go from New York to California, a bocher. It was a story, And she asked the Rebbe, and when the Rebbe said that he would like Label to do that, my Bobby's reply to the Rebbe was, "As sein Melech heißt, vet man azeitan." Tafshin Yud, in the summer. Verstehst? Now, she Bichlal had. I found a letter from Azedi to my parents from Tafshin Chav Ches. Tishrei Tafshin Chav Ches. That Rosh Hashanah, in the middle of the Fabrengen, the Rebbe sent up a bottle of wine to the ladies' shul for Rebbe to Posner. Then a few minutes later, the Rebbe sent out a second bottle for all the ladies. There's only zank and jealousy. Okay, but that was, my Bubby was a special lady. Anyway, so that's my Bubby and Zadie. You know, everybody heard of Dr. Twersky? Dr. Twersky was in Pittsburgh, and he was a geschworene chassid of my Zadie. He was very close to, if you want later, I'll tell you a whole story. But my Zadie was, he learned to Lubavitch, was by all three Rebbeim, and by him, he never said Rebbe Rashab, Frier Dike Rebbe, never. Always the Rebbe. And he told me once, the Rebbe had bei mir gefragt, Shalom, nach wem bist du genommen? Who are you named after? And I was trying to figure out, the Rebbe asked me, since when what was the occasion? I figured out it was the Rebbe Rashab that asked him that.
Yeah.
But he told me the Rebbe.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways.
Other Chassidim didn't do that.
What?
Is the Rebbe...
My Zadie was
Tate, the Rebbe,
the Rebbe, and that's it. Never did he say Yener Rebbe or, garnished. Straight.
One of the integral components of being a chassid are the Chassidish Yomim Tovim and Yom Pagra. Whether it's Hey Tevis, Yud Shvat, Yud Aleph Nisan, or Gimel Tammuz. These days give us an opportunity to connect with our Rabbeim, to connect with each other, and be better Chassidim. What is the story behind each of these days? How did the Rebbe commemorate and celebrate these days? And most importantly, what are the lessons, the takeaways, and the action items Hamaisa Hua Ikr needed for each of these days? All of this and much, much more are answered in the new set recently published by Der Herr. Our Days is a journey through the Chabad calendar in story, meaning, and practice. With over 700 beautiful, glossy pages with elevated content, beautiful, beautiful photographs, you, your family, and friends will enjoy and live with each Chassidish Yom Tiv. This book is a must for every Lubavitcher home, for every shul, for every school. It is a perfect gift item. This will not collect dust. It will be used day after day, month after month, year after year. You can have this set. Go to derher.org/Our Days. Order your set today and start living with the Chassidish Yom Tov.
My Zadie Chaim Meir, his family was basically Lubavitchers because I think that his father was even by the Rebbe Marash.
The Shalom Posner, his family was Lubavitch.
Nope.
They weren't? They weren't Chassidim?
No.
Okay.
By Zadie was Poshetin Ramen. That's how we ended up. Etc. No. The Posners, no, they all came to America.
So you're Zadie Chaim Meir.
There's even a svara that they're Einiklach of the Alter Rebbe's brother. And somebody asked my Zadie that. So my Zadie was always, they always lived with the future, not with the past. If you want, I'll tell you later a whole interesting story about that. And we asked him once, is it true that we were Einiklach? And he said, Lamanaf Kimina. Like, but he didn't deny it, and he didn't. There was a psasvar, but I'm not sure. Okay. Anyways, my Zadie Chaim Meir, he was. All the brothers were. He actually was. He was the youngest of the boys, and he ended up in Lubavitch because of his older brothers. One of them was a chayzer. One of them was a sheikhet for the Rebbe Rashab. I mean, they were all. And if I'm not mistaken, his father was with the Rebbe Marash. And we're working now on the whole family history, so I'm going to get the exact details. But, anyways, so. My Zadie Chaim Meir, he learned to Lubavitch. Now, after he got married, he moved to Crimea. Now, Ukraine, Crimea, now, Crimea was full of Yidden. Simferopol, all those places. Ad kedei kach that I think that the names on the train stations were written in Lashon Kodesh, with the Aleph base, in the transliteration. And he would go from Motzei Shabbos till Friday around the little shtetl, do schritte, meal, teach the kids, do all kinds of stuff. In Tafresh Pei Daled, I think it was. It was before my father was born, for sure. It was still in time to feed the Rebbe. He had, my Bubby, my father's mother, she was Arivlin, a Einikel of the Vilna Gaon.
Cousin of the former president.
Yes. Second cousins. when they came to Russia, to Israel, they second cousins, the same family. So when he had brothers-in-law who were very wealthy. They weren't chassidim, but they were fine, And they decided they're going to sell everything, get a few pieces of gold, put it into their, leave Russia and Zachab Trogen, and my Zayda said he is not going to until he has to have the Frierdiker Rebbe. They were decided to go to Eretz Yisrael. Those days there was a whole big tenuah to go to Eretz Yisrael, The Zionists were starting, because Russia was bad, as we said before, Russia was a tough place. So they decided they're going to go to Eretz Yisrael. So my Zaydi said, no, he has to first ask the Frierdiker Rebbe. He was there, by the way, in Tafresh Bezayin, when the Frierdiker Rebbe was in the Vagzal, when he said, Hi Hashem Elokeinu Imonu, when the Gufim sind nicht gegangen, nor the Gufim, the whole story. My Zaydi was there in the train station. So my Zaydi went to the Frierdiker Rebbe. At that time, my father had two older sisters, Perman and Zalmanov. They were, let's say, 5 and 4. Little girls. So Frierdiker Rebbe asked my Zayde, was sagen die Kinder? What did the kids say about going to Eretz Yisrael? And my Zayde said, actually, when he asks the kids, do they want to go to Eretz Yisrael? The Ältere sagt, as if will gain. They had idea what Eretz Yisrael is, like behind Pluto. Okay?
Pluto's not a planet anymore.
Right, it's Oliver Shalom, but is he still there? So the Ältere sagt, as if will gain. The older one says she wants to go. The Ingere, the little one, a 4-year-old, 3-4-year-old, whatever she was, sie sagt, ich will nicht. Whenever you say you're going to Israel, ich will nicht. I don't want. That's what he told the Frierdiker Rebbe. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said, man darf sich zuhören, was kleine Kinder sagen. You have to listen to what little kids say. Und du wirst noch fahren in Eretz Yisrael. Frierdiker Rebbe said, du wirst noch fahren in Eretz Yisrael. Years later, after the Frierdiker Rebbe left, Zaydi was in shlichus, and he was arrested, I don't know how many times. All the Russian Lubavitcher kids knew, if your father walks out of the house with Talzit film with police, that means he's not coming back. They all knew that. My Zaydi, whenever he used to walk out with the talis with the police, he would tell the kids, Kinder, lach deiget nicht, ich will noch liegen auf Arazesim. That's what he kept to say. Ich will noch liegen auf Arazesim. And he used to come back every time he came back. So, and eventually they all left Russia, of course. My Zaydi had always heard that when they left Russia, the family wasn't all united because one son stayed in Russia, came out many years later, my uncle. And my Bubby, my father's mother, had passed away in the year Tafshin on the operating table in Kharkov. The operators went bad, the ganze Meise. So that's why the family decided whoever is in Israel will all have a place in Harazezim, we'll all be together. So that's the basic story of my Zayde Chaim Meir. He came to Eretz Yisrael. He was one of the first people to settle in Kfar Chabad. He had a lot of letters from the Rebbe then, and he never left Eretz Yisrael after that, so he wasn't here by my father's wedding. But but he was a stout chassid.
Okay, so I want to go to your parents. And so your father, first of all, it's two different stories, your father and your mother. So your father, maybe we'll start with your father. Your father was born in Russia.
Until a few years ago, no one knew where exactly he was born. He was born in Zhankoye, near Simferopol, yeah.
How old was he when they went to Eretz Yisrael?
Oh, no.
So you go.
After his bar mitzvah, he left with everybody, with the famous Eshalonen. Now, one sec. Let's just get a little bit of history here. Once the war broke out, the Second World War, the place was going bananas, right? So my father was in Almaty. There were refugees that were just running anyway. So a whole bunch of refugees came to Almaty, where the Rebbe Levik's father was. The Rebbe's father was, the Rebbe Levik. So he was there for over a year, maybe even 2 years, I don't know. He was there for a good while. And that's where he met Leibel Raskin, who later became the shlich in Morocco. Because they were both two little kids in the train station for 2 weeks till they finally found a place where to stay. And from then, they were good friends till the end. So from Almaty, then they all ran weiter to Tashkent, to Samarkand. Now, what happened was, people wanted to leave Russia, but it was impossible. Impossible. I think even the train system, I think, was different in Russia. The train tracks push it, so people shouldn't be able to run out, So when the Nazis came into Poland in 1939, right, the Jews in Poland had no clue what the Nazis are planning to do. They just knew the Nazis are conquering countries, but they didn't know what they're going to do. So the Yidden were split into basically two camps. Some said the Nazis are normale Menschen, Some said no, and they ran away to Russia. So those that ran away to Russia, most of them got saved. They ran till Sibir, as far as possible.
Well, eventually the Nazis went into Russia. So
yeah, but they didn't make it all the way down there.
Right, so they had to go deeper into Russia.
Sure. So, but most of them got saved. Sof kol sof. It was hard. It was terrible. But most of them got saved. Those who stayed in Poland all went to the concentration camps. Geëindigd. Now Stalin, for some reason, made a very interesting law after the war was over, that all those that have a Polish passport could come back from Poland, from Russia back to Poland. So what did the Chassidim do? They figured they'll make false Polish passports and Zachwistrog, which is a parsha for itself. It's a long, long story how that
That's
happened.
how all the Lubavitch Chassidim got out of Russia.
Right? And when you look, there's a paper that came out not too long ago that has a list of all the people. On that first page, I have Rabban Ischano, the Rebbe's mother, and on that same page is my father's family. The mamish on the same exact page. They were on the same train, and there was a whole story with my two aunts, how the Rebbe Tzachana did not want to leave Moscow and go. She was afraid. And then they went up, and they told her, she said, with them I will go. A whole long story.
So one second. But I sort of go back to Almaty. Why were they in Almaty? Weren't most Chassidim in Tashkent or
afterwards? Tashkent was later.
Samarkand.
Yeah, but from Almaty they went to Tashkent.
So I remember I once spoke to your father about things that he remembered from the Rebbe's father. So maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
My father never saw the Rebbe's father.
He said a story about steps. That's what I remember. Something about steps that he almost saw him. Am I making that up?
I don't know. The main he never saw. That's the fact. Because they were in a different part of town, and my Zayda was afraid to take my father. My Zayda went a few times. My Zayda, Chaim Meir, he did. But my father never saw. As a matter of fact, when it was Shnas HaShloshim, 30 years from the Rebbe's, from Rebbe Levik's Histalkus. He passed away in Tavshin Dalet, 1944. This was 1974. My father was Sifra Chofav, and the Rebbe said then by the Fabringen that all those who were Meshamish, my father, should say with me L'chaim. And my father, of course, didn't say. Then the Rebbe, something happened over there, but there was one Fabringen where I don't know if it was that Fabringen or a later one, where the Rebbe asked the David Raskin, because the Rebbe David Raskin used to stand here on the Rebbe's left, to ask my father, who was standing in that by the Fabringen, if he was ever Meshamish. My father smiled. No, he didn't respond, because then the Rebbe asked Rebbe David, no. So Rebbe David told the Rebbe, Schmeichelt. Rebbe David was a soldier number one.
That's your father's signature look, the Schmeichel.
Yeah, my father wouldn't answer the Rebbe. My father always, if you remind me later, I'll tell you.
I saw a video by Dallas. Rebbe's asking him questions. He doesn't say.
My father. I have a whole story to explain that. He never answered a question. The Rebbe asks a question. It's a question. The Rebbe doesn't need you to give him information. The Rebbe knows information. He doesn't need you to, whatever. Anyway, so then he told the Rebbe Schmeichel. So the Rebbe said, ask him, if he ever poured a cup of tea. Of course, my father didn't answer. And the Rebbe said from that thing, still you should say L'chaim. My father was very close to the Rebbe Tzachana when he was in Russia, in Poking. My aunts were very close to the Rebbe Tzachana.
So this is after the stalkus of the Rebbe's father?
Yeah, after. Not even in Almaty. This is already later. And they helped her a lot. It's a whole long story. They helped her a lot. And she sent a beautiful letter to my aunt years later. There was a time when they were running, whatever, and my aunt stood in front of Rebbe Tzachana because the Nazis were shooting. And she.
What do you mean the Nazis were shooting?
In the train station over there.
The Nazis?
seemingly. The Germans, the dust. It was episode story there. I'm not exactly sure the details.
This is before the
Later. Do you know how many Jews got killed after the war?
by the Nazis.
By the Polish, by the Dutch, by the Yisrael. So they were shooting at them, and my aunt stood in front of the Rebbe Tzachana to block, just in case they does. And the Rebbe Tzachana appreciated that for Leilam Vod. Anyway, so there was 1 year, believe it or not, Tafshi Mem Gimel. Mem Gimel, yes. 1983. The Rebbe Fabrengen, Shabbos, Chafav, the Rebbe said that all those who were Shabbos, my father, should say L'chaim. And my father didn't, because he figured last time was just a Hiras Shah. The Rebbe. Fartik, Fabrengen finished. The next Shabbos was Shabbos Mevarchim Elul. The next Shabbos. So, the Rebbe spoke at first Sikha. The second Sikha, the Rebbe said, we have to be mashlim. We have to fill in what we didn't finish last week. The first thing is the siyum. The Rebbe always, when he made a siyum by Yartzeit, the next Shabbos, he would discuss it maybe once or 2 times or 3 times. And the Rebbe spoke for a long, like at least a half hour, 40 minutes on the siyum. And then the Rebbe paused, and the Rebbe said, there's another thing that we have to fill in here. And the Rebbe said that last week I asked that all those that were Mishamish, my father, should say L'chaim. There's someone here, I'm not going to say his name because he's standing right here, who did not. And the Rebbe in the whole thing, he's always Taka'onav, he's a very humble, this and that and whatever. But being that this is something that has to do with me, with the kibbud av of my father, so therefore it's missed. And then the Rebbe said, and if he doesn't think that I mean him, it's nicht, And the Rebbe went back to the siyum for another half hour. At the end of the Sikha, the Rebbe turned like that towards my father. So my father said L'chaim. And that was just because Al-Mata. That was, Anyway, so my Zayde, where we were back to my father.
I guess we're talking about now how they left Russia.
Right. Okay, so I said then the Polish passports. Right, so they went out. My father went to Poking. He was there for a good 2 years, I think.
And that's where Rebbe Tzachana was also.
Rebbe Tzachana was there too, right? That's why my father didn't see the Rebbe in Paris, because she went from Poking to Paris in 1947, and they were in Poking until 1948. Mm-hmm. So that's why my father didn't go to Paris, so didn't see the Rebbe then.
Right, and from Poking, they went straight to Eretz Yisrael?
No. They went to Paris.
So
they went to Brunois. Sure.
Oh, he learned in Brunois.
It wasn't so much learning in Brunois. That's what the yeshiva... As all the Platin moved, they come to Brunois.
Oh, so all the Platin in Paris moved to Brunois. That's what happened.
There was a hotel called Hotel Modern. That's where they all got one room or a half a room or whatever, and they all stayed in the Modern for years. That's why in 1954, Toshin Yodalit, the Rebbetzin, the Rebbetzin made a trip to Paris, a secret.
Why did she go?
Because the Rebbe wanted to have first-hand information how the Platin are doing. No, but there was one person only that knew that she's coming, Father Vilshansky, and he was put in charge.
Because he was there.
He was there. He was in charge. He was in
the Lishka.
The Lishka. So therefore, but otherwise, nobody knew who the Rebbetzin is, what. Because the Rebbe wanted to have first-hand information of what's going on. Okay. Anyway, so they were in Poking. Then they came.
I think
to
the Rebbe
Brunois.
went with her to the airport. I think that's what they say.
Say again.
They say that the Rebbe went with her to the airport.
Sure. Beryl Unick told me himself.
What?
The first year after Chav B'Shvat, I had to speak for the ladies. I used to give a shir then in Crown Heights. I mean, I still do. And I went over to Rebbe, personal friend, and I asked him, Rebbe, you have to tell me something that you never said yet, because I have to speak for the ladies. So he told me that till now he never wanted to say it, but he's going to. And he said that when the Rebbetzin went into the airport, they went in the same taxi. He was sitting in the front, and the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin in the back. They came to the airport. He schlepped the suitcases. He went to the check-in. The Rebbe and the Rebbetzin were standing over there in the back, and he did all the check-in, all the paperwork. The Rebbetzin just came for a moment. Then, when the Rebbetzin had to leave to go to the plane, the Rebbe asked the Beryl Unick if there's a porch from where you could see the planes. And he said, yeah, this is upstairs. So they went up to the porch, and they waited until those days So
before 9/11, you could go all the way.
I was going to say, not even 9/11, before, we used to walk to the plane. We used to get, today only the president.
Oh, you mean that you walk on the thing?
Used to partial walk.
But I'm saying today you can't even go that far.
Yeah,
the security.
No.
Yeah.
Those days, I'll soon tell you about my parents' wedding. Everybody went on the plane and came off, But So the Rebbe and Rebbe Levi went upstairs on the porch. He said, and the Rebbe waited until when the plane took off, so the Rebbe was staring. This is, yeah. So the Rebbetzin went to Paris. She went for about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Sure. There's actually postcards from Italy. She also went to Italy then.
On the way back.
No. When she was then in Paris, she was also in Italy.
Mm-hmm.
Where, what, when, I have no idea. I only saw the postcards.
And she was by herself the whole time? I don't know. Okay.
Don't know. Okay, so getting back to my parents. So then my father was in Brinois. From Brinois, that's where the Lishke was sending all types of people. So in 1948 or 49, a big group went to Eretz Yisrael, and that's what started Kfar Chabad. It took a while till it became Kfar Chabad. It was Safaria, and the next door, ahead, it was a ganze Meise, and then finally they all settled in Kfar Chabad. This was still in...
And some of the faculty in Paris and Rouen went also, like Shlem Chaim. So Nissen stayed, and then Shlem Chaim went.
Rabbi Garelik for the Rav Kfar Chabad. He was a third or fourth cousin of Mezede. They all went to Kfar Chabad. They all went to Eretz Yisrael. A few stayed back, and a few went. Yeah. So my father went to Eretz Yisrael, and he learned in Tomei Chetumim over there in Tel Aviv. He learned by Reb Shel Brook. He learned by there were different people. Now, right after Tafshin Yud Aleph, it became a tenua of going to the Rebbe, the Bochrim.
How old was he in Tafshin Yud Aleph?
Tafshin Yud Beis, he turned, Tzadi Beis, Yud Beis. Tafshin Yud Beis, he was 20.
Mm-hmm. So it became a tenua that everyone wants to be by the Rebbe.
There were a few Yidden.
Who was in charge of bringing that tenua? Where did this come from?
It seemingly is given a Pinalto, it's given a Shel Brook. Even Shlem Chaim, to a certain extent, he was talking about his kashas to the Rebbe,
So they already raised with this.
Yeah. They were. It was very interesting how right away already Tafshin Yud Aleph. Vice two is you had, for example, big people like Reb Shlomo Yosef Zevin. Yosef Zevin was one of the top people in Eretz Yisrael. He was a roommate with the Rebbe as a Bocher. The Friedike Rebbe asked Reb Shlomo Yosef Zevin when the Rebbe came. He wasn't yet a chassan. He sent him on a short trip somewhere. Because the Friedike Rebbe wanted Shlomo Yosef Zevin to give the Friedike Rebbe a report about the Rebbe. This is a story that he said on a Yud Aleph Nissen many years later in Kfar Chabad. He came to speak about the Rebbe. So he told him this story. So he says, the Rebbe was a goin, that there was no question. He says, but I was more impressed with his Yiras Shamayim. He says, because Shlomo Yosef Zevin said, because they were traveling, the food that they had was from Beis Harav, 100% kosher and shtakushadis. But he saw that the Rebbe was hesitating because the keli that they had for Netilas Yadayim was a Pesach Shaila on the keli. So the Rebbe, in a very, delicate way, didn't eat, but not because of the kashas of the food, because there was a question on the keli and Netilas Yadayim. This is so people like Zevin, and they wrote a Ksavis Kasher, a very, very strong Ksavis Kasher in Tafshin Yud Aleph. So Ksavis Kasher, to become Chassidim of the Rebbe. So and that's how it happened. So a few of the Bochrim, Leibel Raskin, managed to go already in Tafshin Yud Aleph, I think you came to, 1954. My father had a problem. My father was a Bisla Lebedike Chevraman. There was a group, which is still around today to a certain extent, called Yad La'achim, Pe'ilim, against the missionaries. And my father was one of these guys. And
he was
against the missionaries. Those days, there were a lot of kids that came from Taimon.
He was part of the organization?
He was working. He was one of the volunteers. Shomber Lifshitz was in charge. And
it was Lubavitcher people that were involved.
Yeah, it was big Lubavitcher people, sure. And one day, see, the missionaries, they gave presents to the kids, bicycles, and our guys gave candies. That's a first jump, yeah. So one time my father got really angry at one of these priests or whatever they were. My father gave him a zet, as a kid boy. So the next day, the police came to the yeshiva. They put all the boys on a lineup. My father used to have a hat and glasses, and no glasses. So he came to the lineup with a casquette and with glasses. The guy pointed him out in a second. My father ended up in jail with another two Bochrim. They were in jail for a little while. And gerade when he came home, so he told his father, I was also in jail, because my Zayda was in jail. He says, yeah, ich bin in jail. We're comparing the jails of Israel to the jails in Russia. Anyways, but so he had a lot of problems in his passport. So it took him over 2 years to be able to get papers to leave Israel. Even after he left, what?
I heard a few stories. He went to...
He was in London for a half a year.
And didn't he go... Is this a true story? He went to Ben Gurion's house?
Not to his house. He sent him a letter.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few letters. I have a few letters that he sent. I got it from the archives of the government in Israel to a few people that he had to write letters and explain.
He was working very hard and getting...
He told me. And the truth is, there were some Bochrim, the reason why they didn't go to the Rebbe at that time was because they knew they have to waste a year to be able to put together the paperwork. And they said, that's not how you go to the Rebbe. You don't waste a year of yeshiva. That was the...
Debate, the debate.
There was sort of yeah. So Lepoil, my father, finally, just very interessant, my father, the first letter that he got from the Rebbe, okay? He got a letter in Tafshin Yudal, there's a Bocher, because he's asking the Rebbe about coming to America. A couple of months ago, I got a hold of a letter from the Rebbe to Reb Shlomo Chaim, who was a mashpia. The last line over there, it says, that I'm attaching here a letter for a bocher, my father, and you'll give it to him and you'll add whatever needs to be added. So that first letter that my father got, he got it through Reb Shlomo Chaim. So Shlomo Chaim was his mashpia. I mean, to the extent that the Rebbe sent him the letter through Shlomo Chaim. So Shlomo Chaim was a big effect on him. Anyway, so then he finally came to the Rebbe, Shabbos Mevorchim Tammuz Tavshin Tezvav. This was the same month that the Rebbe was sending the shluchim to Eretz Yisrael, the famous Yad HaChamisha story.
Tavshin
Tezvav.
Tezayin?
I think it was Tezvav.
Okay.
Well, you could check whenever that
We'll
was.
check the records. Okay.
Basically, there were some Fedayins that came and they made this pogrom in Kfar Chabad where the 5 boys got killed. So the Rebbe in the summer, he sent 15 Bachrim to represent him. So this was in that month. And so then he was in 770 for a good 2 years. Then he became a mashpia in Newark. Newark now is Marston, but before they were in Newark. He was a mashpia in Newark. And then Purim Tavshin Chai became a chassan. By the Fabring that day, they got an answer.
Before the Fabring.
What?
By the Fabringen.
By the Fabring, the Rebbe gave him a piece of cake and to my Zaydi.
And that was the...
No, it was in the morning the Rebbe already sent out a zettel, that's come. Purim Tavshin Chai.
So before you move on, I have a question about your father. Someone actually asked me recently, I hope he doesn't mind that I'm sharing it, I'm not going to share with his name, but he's been listening to some of the interviews that I've been doing. And he didn't go to Teimchet Mimim, this fellow. So he asked me, he keeps on hearing about, everyone talks about Rabbi Levi Garelik with so much haracha. It's like, what is it? What is it? That was the question that he asked me.
In one sentence, my father was a person who lived the Rebbe 24/7, 365. Kipshute. No gimmicks, no garnished. Straight. Rebbe, and that's it. The fact that he was in Italy, there's Italy, there's my father. He's there because the Rebbe sent him, and there was nothing that he did before he thought, what would the Rebbe want me to do in this case? And he was always right. I'll tell you a story, Bekitzer. The first few years, my father got letters from the Rebbe galore every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks he got a letter.
These were responses?
Responses to questions, to this, to that, or from Rabbi Chadikov, which all the letters from Rabbi Chadikov was...
So your father did write?
My father wrote, yeah, sure. My father wrote.
You said it before he didn't speak, but he did write.
Yeah, writing, yes. He always wrote. Yeah, wrote. The Rebbe always wanted... Not only that, if he did, imagine, it was one Tishrei. The day after Simchas Torah, the Rebbe sent a letter It's already 3 weeks, I didn't get anything. Tishrei. The Rebbe has plenty what to do, Tishrei, yeah? Underline 3 times. It doesn't make sense. My father tried to write to the Rebbe, because the Rebbe Pasha kept on always. I have a whole bunch of letters where the Rebbe is complaining why there's no letters. So, I don't know if it was Tavshir Chav Ches or Tavshir Chav Tes, about 10 years into the shlichus. The Rebbe in Yechidus told him, when he used to come every year for Chavav, it's another parsha, and the Rebbe told him, bis when will ich dir darfen arum nehmen wie ein Kind auf die Hand? Till when will I have to carry you around like a child in the arms? And my brother says the Rebbe went like this. And the Rebbe said, tracht in Chabad, best du mechaven sein zu mein Kavane. Think in Chabad and you'll be mechaven to my
intent,
my intentions. Again, not because it's my father. Any time that we did something, and I remember many times there was a question to do it like this, to do it like that, and he would say, I think maybe it should be done like that. He was always right, always. There were times that there was no time to ask the Rebbe. There were certain big things in Italy. And I remember my father had to make decisions. He was always right, always. But I remember, sometimes he had to go to a big meeting, with big people, government people, or even in the community. He would sit up a whole night with the onion papers, the Amalek Sichas, there were onion papers, a whole night. Go to shul, and from there go to the Asifa. He was in the Sicha. And that's how he went. And
that's how he prepared.
And he was always successful, always. No matter who he met. In his later years, finally, we got to be with Europe and with the head of the European unions. My father used to go to these meetings, and everybody was sitting around the table, and everybody, my father, they were awed. My father, once in a while, would, Ein Dremler. Then he would turn around to McKench again, do we still have to sit here, The world didn't exist to him. It was only a Rebbe, and that's it. The rest is... we have.
We're always looking, myself included, for ways to stay and be connected to the Rebbe, and not just any way, but something tangible. The way to do it, especially around Chaf B'Shvat, is Keren HaChamish. A little bit of the background. Keren HaChamish, which is the Rashi Tevis Harbanis Chayim Mushka, is a fund that was opened by the Rebbe immediately after the passing of the Rebbetzin on Chaf B'Shvat Tavshin Mem Ches during the Shiva. In fact, it's the only corporation that the Rebbe himself opened. And the idea is really for communal needs that relate to women. Women's education, women that are struggling financially, and the general welfare of women and girls. And here's the interesting part. The Rebbe gave instructions how to give. The Rebbe said to give in increments of 470, which is the gematria of the Rebbetzин's name. Whether it's $4.70, $47, 470, or 4,700. Giving in these increments is how the Rebbe directed us to support this fund and honor the Rebbetzin. This past year, Keren HaChamish gave out over $1 million to Achnasas Kala, to women and girls programs, and to Mikvais. To me, when we do this, we're not just donating. We're fulfilling a specific request the Rebbe made. We are connecting ourselves to the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin. I will be donating to Keren HaChamish this Chaf B'Shvat, and you can too at kerenhachamish.org. That's KERENHACHOMESH.org. Okay, so back to when he's a bacher. You got to the engagement already. So first of all, there's two things. Number one, I'm mixing two things. Maybe I shouldn't, but first of all, there's so much kiruvim that your father received from the Rebbe. So I'm interested to know if that was like when he became a shliach, and that was before. But the second part is that in general, the connection that the Rebbe had with the Bachrim and the Yuds was like a very special, deep and open. Meaning there's many Bachrim, or a lot of the Bachrim that had that connection to the Rebbe. So it's not I don't know if that's my question or I'm segueing into that discussion with you.
I don't know if my father as a Bacher had more kiruvim than others. The Rebbe definitely saw in this guy Emeskeit, Chassidishkeit. That to him, the Rebbe is everything. That for sure. And I guess that putting that together with the fact that they were the first ones to go overseas, there's another very important element here to realize. My father went on a type of shlichus that nobody else did in the next 60 years. My father was sent as a Rav of a community. In other words, the Rebbe wasn't sending someone to open up a Beis Chabad and expand and conquer the world. The Rebbe sent him as a Rav of a shul. You're taking a Bocher in 770, was learned Samach Vovenheim Beis from the Kupirte, and you're taking him and you're sending him to become a Rav for Balabatim. Okay? I don't know if anybody could understand the oxymoron here. Okay? And even in the first year, the Rebbe saw Hatzlacha. So, first of all, the Rebbe should do something like that was very out of the ordinary. Take a bocher and send him. Now, the Rebbe did tell my father to make sure to get the Yeriere, Yodin, etc.,
This is for the shlichus or before?
It was both.
So after his chasana?
Both, yeah. Even before the chasana, after the chasana. But there was a Rav in Newark. His name was Rav Spitz. He was a Tomim, actually, from before.
From
from Atvatsk, I think he was. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's in the Sefer HaTmeim, but his daughter actually worked the nights for a while. And she told me when she was a little girl that her father came from Newark to my parents' chuppah with her father, because my father was very close to him in Newark, noch in yeshiva. And the Rebbe sent him to be a Rav in a place, and from that to build the Moisdes, and that's what happened, Taki. So the whole shlichus was a different type of shlichus. It's not the pshat that the Rebbe sent, to this city, go and start opening up a school and doesn't yet. No. Went to an established community, put him into as a Rav. Now before that, there's a whole story how that happened, but I think that's and the main thing is, my father, no matter how many years he was in Italy, he always davened barichas. He always continued learning Maimarim, Chassidus, and he learned a lot of Nigla too, of course, no question. He had a lot of shilas that he used to get from, and you would never think that he left 770. You would never think that he left 770. In Tovshi Chaf Aleph came Rabbi Cheskel Sarne, Rosh Yeshiva. He walked into our house and he saw the Rebbe's picture. And he said, der Lubavitcher Rebbe schmeichelt. Hat schon eingenommen in Italia. He already, Rav Kahn, for the Ponovitch Rosh Yeshiva, they came to all the chief rabbis of Israel, from Rav Nissim, Tavshich Rav Zayin, all the chief rabbis of Israel were in our house. All of them. Not from Rav Nissim, Rav Unterman, all of them. They were personal friends of my father. And my father was this guy who learned Samach Vav and Ein Beis. That was his.
And that's how he.
But they saw that he lives the Rebbe. The Rambam says, why do people fear a melech? In the Welt, they fear because of his whip, not because of him. Mashenke ba melech b'Yisrael is because ein olav el Hashem alikav. If the melech is bottled to the Eibishter, automatically the people are going to be bottled to him. It's a kemaim upon him. I think that when they saw his bittul to the Rebbe, I think that's what got them.
Okay. Fine. So I have a few questions about the perspective that you gave. I think you encapsulated some of it. I just want to go back to the story a little bit. He got engaged to your mother, and I believe that the Rebbe
was very much involved in that shidduch. Now, the real shadchan was Rabbi Jacobson, Rabbi Yisrael Jacobson. But the Rebbe, for example, the Rebbe sent my father to Pittsburgh, Kaviyochel, to Chazer the Fabrengen. But really, it was so my father could get to see more who the family is.
Because your mother was living in Pittsburgh.
My mother was in Pittsburgh. She was teaching for Mazedi. Yeah. And Rabbi Chadakov gave him, I think, $75 or $100, Yemot, to buy a present for my mother.
And they weren't engaged.
They weren't engaged yet. And Tzvi Lerman then lived in Pittsburgh. And he went with my father.
So your mother is American.
Like the flag, as American as the flag.
She's born in America?
My mother was born in Chicago.
Okay, so she's born
By the way, in the Sikh, when the Rebbe says Amerikaner, russischer Engel, mit der Amerikaner Mädel, the Rebbe says, Dachzach geboren geworden in America. Because she was born before Tafshin.
Right.
She was born in Tzadik Tes.
So an American girl with a Russian bacher.
And it was pretty interesting. My aunt Darren, who was, she was very perturbed by this shidduch.
But the Rebbe was pushing it.
The Rebbe pushed it, yeah.
So they got married in
Dalet Tammuz.
So what's this? Okay.
They became Chassid Kale Purim Tavshechai. The Tanoim, those days was Tanoim, wasn't Vortel Chaim, was Tanoim. The Tanoim was Beis Nissen in Pittsburgh. And the Chassid was Dalet Tammuz Tavshechai. If you want, we'll talk about that too.
It was in New York.
Oh.
The Rebbe was Sadik Kedushin, right?
What happened was, the Rebbe was Sadik, my uncle Zalman Posner, his Chassid was in New York, Kislev Tavshin Yud, at the time of the Fidik Rebbe. This Kala was from New York, Rabbi Kazanovsky's daughter. And they all went into Yechidus, by the way, then. That's why when my mother was in Yechidus by the Fidik Rebbe. She remembers very well the Yechidus. The next year, Tavshin Yud Aleph, my uncle Label got married in New York, and the Rebbe was Masada Kedusha. So the Rebbe was ready by 2 weddings of the family. Came to my parents' wedding, was Tavshin Chai, 8 years later. Now, my mother and father wanted the wedding in New York so the Rebbe could be Masada Kedushin, because the Rebbe was Masada Kedushin until Tavshin Chav, till 1960.
But then already was only, if you're going to shlichus,
it was different.
Right?
No, but there was no question that most of the Bachrim then were going to go in shlichus. And my grandfather, as much as he wanted the Chassan to be in New York, because the Rebbe was Masada Kedushin, the problem was that he was in Pittsburgh. The yeshiva he has is in Pittsburgh. The donors that he has are in Pittsburgh. And Mitamol, come to Chassan, from the daughter, he goes to New York. So they get passed. So they didn't know what to do. He also wants the wedding in New York, but it's Fartan Shlichus over there, how do you do it? So they went to Yechidus, and they told the Rebbe the problem. So the Rebbe said, Machna Pshara, we're going to make a compromise. We're going to make the chuppah here and the wedding in Pittsburgh. And the Rebbe said, we're going to make the chuppah earlier in the day. Normally the chuppahs were 5, 6 o'clock. You know, by the way, a little bit of the history of the chuppahs is 770. The Rebbe used to go to the hall. The first 3-4 years, the Rebbe went to the hall of the weddings. At one point, the Rebbe said, Ad Khan, it's pushing too much time and he can't. The first chassan after that was the David Raskin. So the David Raskin, he said, he's not getting married if the Rebbe is not... So he asked the Rebbe, if he makes the chuppah in 770, would that be okay? And the Rebbe said, sure. And that's his gewaren, that all the chuppahs are in 770.
That's why Adiyim.
Oh, yeah. But he's the one that actually got it. And so the Rebbe said what he's going to do is they're going to change the schedule, make the chuppah earlier in the day, like 1:30 or 2 o'clock. And then after the chuppah, they'll go to the airport, take a plane, and go to Pittsburgh. And the meal the Masud is going to be over there. And the Rebbe, I think the Rebbe said that, anyways, most people don't come to the chuppah anyways. Most people come later to the dinner. So nobody's going to know the difference anyways. I'll time to say that. A cute episode about that. I had a cousin from Manhattan, my Bobby's cousin's son, whatever. He was my mother's age. So he came to the chuppah. Those days, the system was that you could only take the photographer was only allowed to take 2 pictures of the Rebbe by the chuppah. Till 1954, you have a lot of pictures. Around 1954, I think it was, the Rebbe called a photographer. He was my uncle's brother-in-law, by the way. My uncle Label and Trainer, the photographer, married 2 sisters.
Okay.
So my uncle Label's wife and Trainer's wife are sisters.
Trainer Studios.
Trainer Studio. So the Rebbe told Trainer, of the chuppah you could take as many pictures as you like. Of me, only 2. So there's only 2. You come to my parents' wedding, you see a spread of 8, 10 beautiful colored pictures. Everybody in black and white, and it's all colors. And all these pictures, how did it happen all of a sudden? Because this cousin of ours, he came with his camera. He was a rich kid. He had a camera that makes then, in 1958, colored slides. Stell dir vor, jene Zeiten. And now he geklappt pictures. You know, he didn't know from nothing. So that's how we have all these beautiful pictures. As a matter of fact, one of the pictures, you see a whole bunch of kids with slappers and ties. Moshe Katlarsky, Chaim David Lane, all these guys. And they're all over there. So I asked them once, what are you guys doing over there by the chuppah and with ties? What happened was, this was Dalet Tammuz, Sunday. In Bedford and Dean, in the yeshiva, they had graduation that day. Mitam, all the boys heard that the Rebbe is Mesadik Kedushin, so they all ran away from the graduation. And they came to the chuppah, so that's how they're all sitting there with
graduation
ties.
ties.
Yeah. This is...
So that's how what happened. They went to Pittsburgh?
They went... Oh, but I'll just tell you something cute.
I'm getting confused with your aunt's...
That's another story.
Yeah, okay.
That's a separate story. So this cousin of mine told me that they actually went to the airport. He drove the car. He had a car, and he drove to the airport, and he also went along with them to Pittsburgh. And a lot of Bachrim went. Bachrim couldn't afford to go to Pittsburgh. So they all went at least to the airport. And they all went on the plane, like we were talking before. You know, you go on the plane. And it was saying, L'chaim, gesungen, getanzt. Finally, they had to leave. So the pilot goes on the microphone, and he says, okay, whoever is not traveling, please go down so we could go. And the Bachrim are saying, noch alachaim, weißt du, lebendig und freilich. Anyways, all the Bachrim go over, and they started dancing by the stairs over there. The plane took off, and they saw out the window the Bachrim dancing. They got to Pittsburgh. As they landed, the pilot goes on the microphone, and he says, it's impossible. It's impossible. People had no clue what happened. And all of a sudden, he says, all the people sitting on the left side of the plane look outside. They look outside, and what do they see? Bachrim dancing. Everybody's going crazy. Was tut's er da? Anyways, they finally stop. They bring the stairs, and the Bachrim are there dancing. Now, normally, the pilot is the last one that goes off the plane. Every time you go off the plane, you see the pilot is still sitting there, right? Not because he loves the place. I think it's the law that he has to be the last one off the plane. So here, the pilot was the first one to go off the plane. The pilot runs down, and he says, how did you guys do it? How did you guys do it? The guys are looking at him and say, wissen nicht what he wants. Finally, he told them, you were just now dancing over there in New York. They understood those words like he said. These were Bachrim that the day before they rented a car. They went to Pittsburgh to help by the Machen Lebedik by the Chasana. So they came the day before. It's much cheaper. Rent a car, 6 guys, you know. And they figured if the Chasik will come to the airport, we may as well meet them at the airport. Mm-hmm. So the pilot said a line, unbelievable line. He said, you guys, you all look alike and you sing the same tune. That was another quotable interesting thing that happened though by this Chasana is the day before was Shabbos. The Chasana was a Sunday, Dalet Tammuz. The day before was Gimel Tammuz, Tavshin Chai. This was the first time that Gimel Tammuz fell out on a Shabbos since Yud Shvat. There were a lot of upbringings that if it was the middle of the week, the Rebbe did not do. The Rebbe would do only the big ones. Yud Kislev, Yud Shvat, Purim. But like a Tu B'Shvat or a Zion, you know, all these other days, the Rebbe would bring only if it fell out on a Shabbos. This Gimel Tammuz was on Shabbos. But something very interesting happened. There were 3 Chasanim that Shabbos. My father, Shmuel David Gurkov, later lived in New Jersey, and Shmuel Heber from St. Louis. 3 Chasanim in one Shabbos in Lubavitch those days. 2 happened. Rabbi Yael and Label Groner, there were happened. There were over 3. I think this was the first time in Lubavitch. So the 3 fathers, my Zayder, Reb Shalom Posner, Yankel Gurkov, and Leibish Heber, the 3 fathers. This was all upstairs in the small zal, you know. So they went over to the Rebbe after davening. They asked the Rebbe if the Rebbe would verbring the COVID, the 3 Chasanim. So the Rebbe said, was haste. It's the Gimel Tammuz, sichert men verbringen. It's Gimel Tammuz, of course we're going to verbring. And that's the famous sich which is printed in the back of Chelik Dal and Likot Sichos, where the Rebbe says that l'chayde, you have Gimel Tammuz and you have the Beis Tammuz. Friedrich Rebbe came out of jail, Yud Beis Tammuz. But Gimel Tammuz was switched from death to life. Switch from death to life is much more than going out of jail. So the Rebbe explains the difference between the personal things of the Rebbe or the general things. A Rebbe, when he comes out to the Chassidim, that's what a Rebbe is. But the fact that it was changed from death to life, that is a personal thing of the Rebbe. So that's what Friedrich Rebbe made a big thing of Yud Beis Tammuz. Aber Chassidim, they have to take Gimel Tammuz and Lach Gegesayim Gimel Tammuz. That was all that Shabbos of that Verbringen. So that's the story of the wedding. After the wedding,
And by your aunt, the same thing happened.
Total different. The same thing that the chuppah here and the wedding there,
Yeah,
but for a total different reason.
But that wasn't because it was already in the family?
Yeah, I'll tell you if you want. I'll tell you the story.
Bekitzer,
To make a long story
just
short,
a-
my aunt, Sarah Rivka Sasonkin soll sein gesund, my mother opened up a kindergarten in Italy. So she was there for Tafshi Chaf Aleph, 1961.
She worked by your...
My mother for a year. She was a teenager.
I just saw a letter from the Rebbe to
Sure.
her about that.
Yeah, the Rebbe sent a few letters. Beautiful long letters in English.
She was writing to the Rebbe about different hardships she was having.
Zeker. And
The Rebbe wrote them all in English.
Yeah.
To your mother also, right?
sometimes
Yeah.
English, sometimes Yiddish, sometimes Hebrew.
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly what to say there was. Why these like this, these like that. Ich weiß nicht. But I have in all three languages. So Rivka was there for a year. After the year was finished, Chaf Aleph in the summer, she went to Israel from Italy. She went to Israel. She became a Kala. She met him twice or three times, not even. And she became a Kala to Avraham Sasonkin. She went back to New York. Now she went back to New York. Comes Elul, and my mother wrote to the Rebbe that she doesn't have a teacher for next year. She doesn't know what to do. I'm not sure exactly the details how it happened, but Sarah Rivka wrote to the Rebbe. I think the Rebbe said, "Ebis v'tasam b'simcha v'tuv levav." In other words, if she agrees to that, she should go back. And Sarah Rivka went to Italy for a year as a Kala. And the date of the wedding was for next Tammuz. Chanukah, that year when she was in Italy, the Zippel, that's the family in Italy that because of them my parents ended up in Italy. They're the ones running the shul. So Mr. Zippel offered to give her a ticket to go to Eretz Yisrael so she could see her chassan. She hardly remembered what it looked like.
He wasn't in New York.
No, he was in Eretz Yisrael. He was in Eretz Yisrael. And that's when the Rebbe sent to her the letter that the Chassan Kala in middle year they shouldn't, between the engagement and the wedding, you should see each other was weniger. So that's not a good idea. That was to her, that was the Sarah Rivka. Mm-hmm. So she didn't go. About a month before the wedding, my grandparents went to Yechidus, and the Rebbe asked them, what are the plans for the wedding? So they said, we're planning to make the wedding in Pittsburgh. This was 2 years after the Rebbe had stopped him.
Right, the Rebbe didn't do it anymore.
And the Rebbe on his own said that he had an idea that he would like to be Mesader Kedushim for Sarah Rivka. Because she went to Italy for a year, he would like to be Mesader Kedushim. But the Rebbe made two conditions. Condition number one is that they have to, that until the chuppah no one should know about it. And number two, that they should put together a bezdin, that the bezdin should paskin, that it should not be ein hara. Because the Rebbe stopped being Mesader Kedushim, and all of a sudden the Rebbe is making an exception.
So what's the ein hara?
As long as I can, people, it's a Shadik in ein hara.
Okay.
And I also know who the bezdin was. The bezdin was my uncle Darren, Dr. Twersky, and Rabbi Chin. There was a rabbi in Mikisport. And the Rebbe said, no, and the fact of making the chuppah here and the wedding there, you already have experience, so, because
Right,
my parents went.
This happened. Okay.
That's how it...
Okay, so after the chasana, your parents lived...
Crown Heights.
Crown Heights. And
But, for that summer, my father was a mashpia or something in Gan Yisrael. For the summer. While there was a mashpia in camp, so he used to come once in a while to Crown Heights, to spend the day in 770, once in a while. And one time he was walking in the hallway, and Rabbi Chadukov saw him. And Rabbi Chadukov told him that you and your wife keep on writing to the Rebbe that you want to go on shlichus. By the way, the Rebbe started Ufaratzta, the whole Ufaratzta, Yud Beis Tammuz Tav Shir Chai. That's a week and a half after my parents' wedding. Yeah. That's when the Rebbe started Ufaratzta, Yud Beis Tammuz. Then the Maimer afterwards, all after Yud Beis Tammuz it started. So I told him, you keep on writing to the Rebbe, you want to go on shlichus. People like you cannot be sent on shlichus. So my father said, Favos, what did I do wrong? So he says, no, you didn't do anything wrong. My father at that time was a mashpia in Newark, in the yeshiva.
So I thought there was a story that when your father was supposed to become mashpia, he didn't want it because he's not going to be able to go on shlichus. Is there any truth to that?
No.
Okay, it's not true.
He wrote to the Rebbe before he went on, before this whole thing. No, after the Rebbe said that he's going to go on shlichus, so he wrote to the Rebbe that he was something about that. No.
But I'm not following the story because...
No, but when he went to Newark, what he wrote to the Rebbe was that he doesn't want to go because he doesn't want to leave Temchat Mimim. He doesn't want to get a job. And the Rebbe said, no, this is still considered Temchat Mimim, or something like that. No. Those days, there was no talk of shlichus when he was a bach. No.
Oh, when he was a bacher, he was in Newark?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't understand that. Okay.
Yeah, as a bacher, he went to Newark. The bachrim then were Shlomo Kunin, Avraham Lipsker,
Got it.
Eli
Okay.
Teitelbaum.
So he was in New York. So his whatever. The Chadikov tells him that you're in Newark,
Right,
okay?
you're in Newark. And the Rebbe doesn't take people from one Moshe to another Moshe.
Right.
So my father told Rabbi Chadikov, oh, that could be taken care of. The person in charge of the yeshivas then was the Rashag, the Rebbe's brother-in-law, Reb Shmuel Gorari. His office was on the third floor of 770. You never saw this, but when you walked into 770, there's an elevator. There was a sign. And the sign said over there, the office from the United Lubavitch Yeshiva is auf dem dritten floor. Bitte nehmt dem elevator. I remember the first time I came to the Rebbe and I saw the word elevator. I wanted to know, what word is that? That's not Yiddish. What word is that, elevator? Yeah. Anyways, so my father went upstairs to the Rashag. And he told him they got married and he needs a raise. So the Rashag asked him, how much do you need? So then he used to get, I think, $70 or $80 a month. He says, I need $2,000 a month. So the Rashag says, are you out of your mind? I can't give you $2,000. My father says, this is what I need. Take it or leave it. I can't give you $2,000. I said, are you firing me? My father said, are you firing me? He said, I have no choice. What do you want me to do? So my father said, could you do me a favor? Just give me a little zettel that I'm fired. I'll take care of the yeshiva later and everything. I just need a zettel that I'm fired. And the Rashag gave him a zettel that he's fired. My father went downstairs and he brought it to Rabbi Chadikov. In other words, within 10 minutes, he took care of the issue. Rabbi Chadikov, I don't know, those who remember Rabbi Chadikov, he was smart like anything. Unbelievable. He was unbelievably clever. Pashat, clever person. But he never showed any emotions or any, So my father gave him the zettel. Okay, thank you. Nothing. And then, about 2 or 3 weeks later, he meets my father in the hallway. And he asked him, would you be willing to go to Europe? My father said, sure. So Rabbi Chadikov said, hey, 1 minute. You have to call your wife first. My mother then was in Pittsburgh. She went there for 2 weeks. So my father stayed in 770. My father went there. So my father said, he's masking, don't worry. Because my mother wanted to go even more than my father. And then my father told Rabbi Chadikov, which country? So Rabbi Chadikov says, L'mainav Kemina. What difference does it make? So my father says, no, doesn't make any difference. I'll go anywhere. But because he had a passport full of problems, like I said before, so he says, the earlier I know where I'm going to start working on a visa. It probably could take a few months until... So Rabbi Chadikov goes, La Marshal, Italia. For example, Italian. Mm-hmm. And the rest is history. And that's why my parents had to go to New York, Paris, Milan, because, Gordetsky worked out a visa for them from Paris to Milan, from France to... it was a whole story, but this was Elul, closer to Rosh Hashanah, and they went to Kislev.
And there's a whole story when they left.
Yeah, there's a whole shlichus. It says from the Shalom and sure. First of all, Mendy Groner, my entire chaver, got me from his father's diary. Levi Groner describes the whole Tzeitzim from the Shalom. It was because they left on a Tuesday. There was a big Tzeitzim from the Shalom on Shabbos and a big one on Sunday night. A ganze Nacht, allem verbracht, as the boilem ever, But they went to Yechidus. Not the day they left, before. And the Rebbe asked him, tut us besimcha v'tuv levav? My parents were like shocked. We kept on writing how happy they are that they're going as shlichus. And the Rebbe's asking, are you going to do it besimcha v'tuv levav? And the Rebbe gave him a whole bunch of tanyas. The Rebbe said sometimes you go on a plane, somebody may need a Tanya. I met somebody on the plane. And he came to my father. My father went around the plane. He started looking for Jews. He didn't find anybody. Then about 2 hours into the flight, the guy comes, tells my father, Efshar Stat Tanya. Seemingly, this guy was in Yechidus.
Mm-hmm.
He was in Yechidus before. The Rebbe told him every day he should learn Tanya. And now he was on the plane. He had no Tanya. So, but, yeah. And then the Rebbe came from his house, and we had a whole tumult of 70, because my parents were about to leave. And the Rebbe asked Rabbi Garelik, what's going on? So he told him. So the Rebbe came out, and he waited till they went to the taxi, until they left.
And then your father, right in the beginning, he didn't come back to the Rebbe.
Oh, what happened was like this. When he landed in Italy, was Yud Tes Kislev. They left Yud Beis Kislev. They went to Paris, they were there over Shabbos. And then Monday, Yud Tes Kislev, they got to Italy. Monday, Tuesday. And the Rebbe by the Fabring, so they sent a telegram. I sent a telegram to the Rebbe. He got anu le Milan, b'sholem. And the Rebbe by the Fabring, and the Rebbe said, somebody should say l'chaim for my father, because sitzt in Milan Fabring Tiftes Kislev. That was that first day they were there. And what did you ask?
He didn't come back to the Rebbe in the beginning.
So came first Shabbos Uvarchim. Mitamol, it's the first Shabbos Uvarchim that he's missing.
First
He went bananas, verstehst du? So he told my mother, Zen, I'm going to go every Shabbos Uvarchim to the Rebbe, you'll see. It's like saying today, I'm going to go every day to the moon. Today, you can't do that. My father said, Zen, ich will gehen jede Shabbos Uvarchim. Just to give you a little taste of that, came Purim. My father decided he wants to go to New York. He couldn't make it. Yitzvat, Purim. Came Sukkot, Pesach, and my father decided, Atkan, he's going for the last days of Pesach to New York. And he actually got one of the Zippel brothers. He had Tamazeh Meshuy gemacht. He got him a ticket. And my father was going to come for the last days, Chol HaMoed. Seemingly, my father wrote to the Rebbe.
This is the first year of shlichus.
First year to Italy. People didn't travel those days that overseas like this. He didn't have a penny to his name. And he wrote to the Rebbe that he's planning to come for the last days. It's all taken care of. And it's second or third day of Chol HaMoed, and he's downstairs. He's the happiest man on earth. He has his ticket. He's waiting for the taxi. As he's waiting for the taxi to come pick him up to go take him to the airport, the mailman comes. We lived in an apartment building, and the mailman puts letters in the boxes. And he sees that he puts them on in my father's. My father said, let me see what the mail is. I'm waiting for the taxi anyways. It was a letter from the Rebbe. It was haste to leave. Achar Shel Pesach. Ufaratzna. The Mashiach. The whole thing. Anyways, bottom line is, no such thing. And my father stayed.
The Rebbe got a report that he was leaving.
No, I think my father wrote.
He wrote to the Rebbe.
Yeah, because the Rebbe writes Memana LeMichtava. No, my father wasn't going to come to the Rebbe without permission.
So he wrote to the Rebbe.
But he wrote to the Rebbe, and that letter came as he's waiting for the taxi. That's why people see this letter in Igris. It doesn't say to who, to what. You don't see the reichkeit of the letter. If you know that it's to my father, and he got it as he's waiting for the taxi, this is nicht normal. And the Rebbe sent it a week before. Because those days you send a letter from Milan, New York to Italy.
Were there official rules then about when you're allowed to come to the Rebbe?
Not yet. It started like the following year, because that's the next year, more shluchim are out. So it started the rule of every 2 years. But that rule did not apply to my father. The rule did not apply to my father to the extent. My father's, till 1970, 71, he used to come once a year. 2 times, I think he went twice. After Tafshel Lamed Aleph, that's when he started coming every 6 weeks. every Yom Pagre, he was here. And Rabbi Garelik one time told him, "Kannst kommen, wenn du willst, as long as you have a good reason." I'll give you an example of a good reason. Tafshel Lamed started Mi Yehudi. The Gezero Hayum of Mi Yehudi, which I'm sure you have plenty on this. And my father got very involved in that. I could talk who knows how long about my father's involvement. And what my father did, in Crown Heights, there was a group called Igud Leman Kiyum Hayadus. Nobody knew who was behind this. One of them is still alive. I'm not going to say his name. If he wants, I will. But the people who are gone is Itche Springer. and whatever. It was
That's
4
a
people.
chauffeur. That's the same thing.
Chauffeur Association, Igel Makimiyatas. These were the two.
I think they had an
So-
office in 788.
Yeah,
I think I work in their office.
yeah. Springer, the Russian Davis, you'll know.
No, I'm saying I think where I sit is
Oh, yeah?
it was
Could
their.
be.
I think I'm not sure.
Very, very possible. So my father made up with them. Every month, send me a letter that you're making an asifa and you need be there. So this, my father always had in his pocket one of these letters, in case Rabbi Chadukov will ask him, why did you come? He'll be able to pull out. Chadukov never asked him, but I'm just saying he had. So that's when he started coming a lot. But the first year, he came for Chofav. And every year he came for Chofav. I think he missed maybe 1 or 2 years. But I'm saying, on the general rule, he came every year for Chofav. For 2 reasons. Number one, because of Rebbe Yitzchak. And number two, Begashmius, it's August in Italy, is dead. People are gone. Wouldn't know the difference anyways. And so it's like, catching 2 birds in one shot.
Right.
And
Okay, so Bechlal, I think there's about your father. First of all, I'm thinking of at least 5 stories that I know about your father that we can talk about, and I'm sure there's many hundreds that I don't know that you can share. And this, I think we hope there's a book being written about this.
I'm preparing a book. It's going to be literally thousands of pages.
Yeah, I'm saying this is we could be sitting here for days talking about it. So
Let me just say, my father got Bli Ein Hara, hundreds correspondence between Beis Chayenu and my father. When I say Beis Chayenu, I mean the Rebbe, Rabbi Chodakov, Tzach. You have to understand that all the letters from Maskiris, from the Rebbe's secretaries, were all either dictated by the Rebbe. They for sure had to go through the Rebbe. There was no such thing, Maskiris sending out a letter, unless just a letter saying Hapan is Kabel, a standard. But any letter with any Hayros, everything went through the Rebbe. I have letters, many, that Rebbe Chadukov signs, and I see that the corrections are the Rebbe's. It's obvious, okay? So I have Bli Ein Hara, hundreds of documents. And you put a story to each one of them, you have right away.
yeah.
Verstehst?
Among Chassidim is brought to you by Chassidische Der Herr. We live in a chaotic world, a world where for us Chassidim, as a Seinu, Lei Ra'inu, we do not have the ability to hear and see the Rebbe on a daily basis. Yet we know that the Rebbe is very much with us, and the Chassidus Chabad is alive and thriving more than ever before. One needs to only tap into it. Chassidische Der Herr provides you and your family with the tools necessary to tap into all of this. Whether it's the monthly magazine, the way it all began, whether it's Der Herr books, Der Herr online content, and so much more. Men, women, and children throughout the world benefit and use these tools on a daily basis. Whether it's children enjoying the children's magazine that comes along with the regular Der Herr, or enjoying the children's podcast, whether it's Bachrim in yeshivas receiving the Der Herr, whether it's girls in high schools enjoying Der Herr Club in their local high school. People all over the world and from all walks of life enjoy and utilize these tools and take advantage of it. If you're not already subscribed to the Herr Monthly Magazine, do so today at derher.org. That's derher.org. Der Herr is a dynamic organization which is committed to continue providing these tools, grow on a constant basis, and do all that we can to help this effort. Baruch Hashem, it takes a lot of resources and finances to make this all happen. You can be part of Der Herr through your financial support as well, through visiting our website derher.org, or through contacting us to setting up a meeting. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the podcast. So I want to move on to you yourself. Like we said, fine, so I said that already. So first of all, you're named after the Rebbe's father. So I don't know how common that was.
It wasn't common at all.
Okay.
Now at present,
I had Chaim Shaul Brook on a recent episode. He was talking about the whole story with his brother, with the Rebbe Zechana, but...
right. So, and he thought for years that he was the first Levi Yitzchak.
Right, then he said that he found out that there were a few more, and then...
I found out.
Okay.
Because there was a Jew, Rabbi Yoslin Moitin, and he had a few sons. Now, Rabbi Yoslin Moitin passed away before Gimel Tammuz. The Rebbe came out to the Levaya. About 10 years later, one of his sons passed away, who actually he's interviewed by Jem. And they asked me to do the Levaya. I'm part of Rebbe Kadisha, and he's a Lubavitcher, you know. So I did the Levaya, and I did Kriya with the children. And then an older person came over to me, and he says he also has to do Kriya. So I asked, he says he's a brother of the Nifter. I said, ooh, you are Rabbi Yossel's son? So he said, yeah. So I said, may I ask what your name is? So he says, Lev. I said, Lev? What kind of name is Lev? He says, no, actually, my name is Levi Yitzchak. I said, you must be kidding. I said, and you're named after his father, right? So he says, yeah. So I said, sorry. By the way, when I was in Yechidus, the Rebbe asked me who you're named after. So I also have a very strong connection. And we became very, very good friends. And he told me, first of all, he came to Crown Heights for Chafov. That year, we made for 80 years of Rebbe Levi Yitzchak. 70 or 80?
80.
80. Paid out, sure. So we made a thing in Crown Heights. It was a bar mitzvah of a Levi Yitzchak. So we made like a little Levi Yitzchak gathering. And he came. He is an exceptional person. Edel, very, very smart. He's into computers. But he said that the Rebbe Zechana was by his bris. Tafshin Hey. In other words, a few months after the Levi passed away.
In
Almatah. Sure. He was born in Almatah. And the Rebbe Zechana was there. Anyway, so he was the first Levi Yitzchak.
So when you were born, your father gave the name Levi Yitzchak?
My parents. Actually, my mother actually was more her idea. They were discussing the names, and my mother came up with the concept of giving Levi Yitzchak. And of course, my father jumped on the idea.
And that was totally novel at that time.
At that time was. And of course, came to the bris. Now, of course, the Rebbe didn't know about the name. The Rebbe just sent a letter. My parents sent a telegram, to the Rebbe that I was born. So the Rebbe sent a regular bris letter. But inside the letter, there was also a $5 bill. Now, $5 bills and brissen goes together because in Hayom Yom, the Rebbe says that there's a minhag that the sandik gives money to make dime for the yeshiva, for the baby. The Rebbe was sandik 4 times. 1 time before the Nesius and 3 times after the Nesius. Before the Nesius was to Shalom Ber Hecht, soll sein gesund und stark, Rabbi J.J. Hecht's son. And the 3 times after Nesius was Rabbi Yosef Rosenfeld was in Tzfas, Rabbi Yosef Chitschik was in Tzfas, and Rabbi Yitzi Tenenbaum in Crown Heights. Sollen sie alle sein gesund. I don't know if by all of them, but by one of them for sure, the Rebbe said that the Friedrich Rebbe, the Rebbe was by a bris with the Friedrich Rebbe in Varsha, and the Friedrich Rebbe said that the minhag is that you give money to make dime, down payment for the yeshiva, and the Friedrich Rebbe took out 20 zlotas. And the Rebbe said that 20 zlotas is the equivalent of $5. And the Rebbe gave $5 for the yeshiva. So my parents made a bris, and the Rebbe sent $5. Let anybody learn pshat whatever they want, but that was the metzias. I only found out about this about 5-6 years ago. My mother gave me the $5 bill. So that was that. Then, and my father, of course, when he went to New York Chafav, my father wanted to bring me to the Rebbe.
A little baby.
Yeah, this was, I was born in Cheshvan, and this was Tammuz. And my father got a telegram back from the Rebbe that he could come. Nesia sakoton achshav eino kadois. That for me to travel now is not kedai. Okay, so my father didn't bring me. And as a matter of fact, the Rebbe Tzachana asked him, where's Levi Yitzchak? He said, my father didn't want to tell her that the Rebbe didn't let this, not so klein, whatever is that psateret that he gave over there, why I didn't come. The following year, my parents sent to the Rebbe Zechana a picture of me, which is this picture right here.
This is the picture that...
The same. Now, it was bigger. It was about this size. I have one exactly the same size.
Showing the camera.
Yeah. Okay, but it was this picture. So when the Rebbe Zechana got it, so my parents got a letter from the Rebbe Zechana. This is an original letter from the Rebbe Zechana.
Mishpachas Garelik.
Right. Here. Mishpachas Garelik hanichbada. Shalom avracha. Hamichtav vatmunas kibalti b'mayadam. I received the letter and the pictures. Seemingly they sent more pictures besides for that one. Toda. Thank you. Hayalodim ne'imim v'yafim. The children are sweet and nice. Tekablu mehem rev nachas b'chol aprotim. You should get from them a lot of nachas in all the details. Kecheftzechem. As you wish. Now, Baruch Hashem, I have smicha. I have a few smichas. But this is my smicha. Where she writes, Levi Yitzchak bli ein hore a ganzer Bocher. Levi Yitzchak a ganzer Bocher. I was only 3 years old at the time. Okay, Bebirchas kol tov asayim, tereshe shleimim v'atzlachaschem, and her signature. And then dash ve'ichulim tovim leha alma Posner. Good regards to my aunt Sarah Rivka, who was there as a girl, Posner.
Can you show it to the camera?
Sure.
But put a little closer. Perfect.
Here's the letter, and here is the envelope, where you could see C.H. Schneerson, 1418 President Street. And this actually collected miles, because as you can see, first it was returned to the Rebbetzin for additional postage, 10 cents. So, Einzach. Then it was sent to Gan Yisrael. Seemingly they received it in Gan Yisrael, and my parents had already left Gan Yisrael. It was already after the summer. So they wrote Via Carlo 16 Milano, and that's how it got to my parents. So it took a little while till it got there, but it finally got there. So you can see over here the Levi Yitzchak Blein Hora Agam, so she was very appreciative of the Levi Yitzchak. Lepoyel, I never saw the Rebbe Zechana, but she saw me every day. And you're going to ask how? Because the Rebbe Zechana, she lived in 1418 President Street. Today it's very all redone. The yeshiva redid the whole building over there. But the way it was, there were 2 doors, 1414 and 1418 President Street. When you went to 1418, there was a long hall, stairs to go to the upstairs floors. It was an apartment building. Downstairs there were 2 apartments, one on the right, one on the left. The Rebbetzin lived on the one on the left. Now, when you went into the apartment, the first room was like a dining room, living room. There was a table with chairs, a couch, and a break front, like a mobilizer. Now, the Rebbetzin had 2 pictures of the Rebbe in that dining room. First, she had on the wall, somebody gave her in a frame, 4 small pictures and 1 bigger picture in the center. The 4 small ones were the Alte Rebbe, Tzemach Tzedek, the Rebbe Rashab, and the Fiedike Rebbe. Of those we have pictures. And the middle, the Rebbe, this was hanging on the wall. When the eunuch family got married, Rebbe eunuch got married that we mentioned before, he was very close to the Rebbetzin because he came out from Russia then with the Rebbetzin. The famous picture that we have of the Rebbe Zechana is from the eunuch wedding.
Right.
Because he was very close to the Rebbe Zechana. So actually, the picture of the Rebbe Zechana, you could get the original picture, has the head table. They just pulled out the Rebbe Zechana. That's how we have. After their wedding, the Rebbe was Besader Kedushin, of course, by their wedding. After the wedding, they came to the Rebbe Zechana and showed her the album of the pictures of the wedding. There's a picture of the Rebbe by their chuppah, stunning picture. It's in the back of the Mekadesh Yisrael. You know, the Rebbe standing straight, looking. It was the middle of the reading of the Ksubah. Stunning picture. And the Rebbe said, that's why I heard the story, that she was looking at the album of the pictures. Mitamol, she came to this picture of the Rebbe. It's really a stunning picture. She said, Azah Sheine Bild. What a beautiful picture. And then right away she took it back. She said, not because it's my son, it's just a beautiful picture. And then she right away turned to the next page, not to make a... But they saw that she likes the picture. The Rebbetzin likes the picture. So they went to a studio and they made her a copy of this picture, and she had it on the break front. When she got my picture, she put it next to that picture of the Rebbe on the break front. And I heard from some people who went to be Menachem Ovel, the Rebbe of Tishrei, this was 2 years later, and they saw both pictures there on the break front.
That picture is also the whole story with in the Rebbe's house.
Was this the Rebbe's house?
That picture was hanging in the Rebbe's house too.
It was, yeah. You mean the picture of the Rebbe Tzichan?
That same picture.
Can say.
I think we wrote about it once.
Could be, I don't know. The Rebbe's house, I have no idea.
Also from the eunuchs.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, there's something with the Rebbe Mushko also said something about that picture. That picture, it was hanging in the Rebbe's study in his house in President Street.
Okay.
Yeah. So
could be.
The whole thing.
In the Rebbe's house, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm saying the whole thing with that picture.
And so this is the Levi Yitzchak. But then, the first time I was in Yechidus,
which
is another whole
my
story.
next question was, when did you come to the Rebbe?
Oh.
That's what I wanted to know about.
Okay, so first of all, I came to the Rebbe the first time I was 7. The Lazars, they used to go every 2 years. I don't know why we didn't, but they used to go. Now, Rebbe Lazar, today is in Russia, when I'm talking about right now, he wasn't born yet. He had 2 older sisters. The oldest one is my age. So she used to go, and she used to tell me what goes on in New York, by the Rebbe. I wanted to know how tall is the Rebbe. I only saw pictures. That's all there was. And those days, there weren't too many pictures of the Rebbe. There were 10 pictures of the Rebbe. That's all there was. But every single night, I had a picture of the Rebbe in my room, and my closet right over here, this height. Every night, I used to go to the picture of the Rebbe before I go to sleep, and I used to say, the Rebbe soll helfen, und mir sollen sich sehen in Gichmet, und der Rebbe soll gesund sein. Every night. I still say it today. Okay? So I had this sort of a relationship with the Rebbe. I never saw him, but I saw him every single day. And when I was 4 years old, I got a letter from the Rebbe. When I was 6 years old, I got a letter from the Rebbe. My mother used to make me write, and the Rebbe used to write back. So this Rebbe in New York, I was buddy. He writes me letters. I see him every day, and they say, so I knew that he's at the other end of the world, but I didn't feel arichuk far. I must say, this really is what happened to me after Gimel Tammuz. After Gimel Tammuz, I just went back to my earlier part of life, where there's a Rebbe on the other end of the world, he's running the show, and I just can't see him right now, and I'll see him tomorrow, whenever I'll... Verstehst? Anyways, finally, when I was 7, my parents decided that we should go to the Rebbe. My mother hadn't been here already in 7 years. The time before that, she was in New York, was when she was pregnant with me. So this was 7 years before. So now we came on Yud Ches Kislev. Yud Ches Kislev was on a Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken. I think Yud Ches Kislev was Thursday or Friday. Whatever, I think it was on a Wednesday. The day before, on Yud Zayin Kislev, the Tanya translated into Italian came off the press. The Rebbe asked my father already 3 years before to start translating Tanya in Italian. You're talking about a massive project. First of all, those days there was only Tanya in English, which was Mindel and the Rebbe did it. So here you have to take in Italian and translate it. It was almost impossible. It's a whole long story. The Rebbe told my father who to use as a translator, etc. Somebody in Trieste, a whole story. Anyways, so finally it came off the press, mamish the day before. So my father decided to send it to the Rebbe, even if it's not bound yet, even just the paper, so the Rebbe should see that it's printed, and very soon it's going to be bound. And my parents decided that the first time that I'll see the Rebbe, I should give it to the Rebbe. The first time we saw the Rebbe was, we came to 770. Those days, the Rebbe used to go home every day between 5:30 to 6:30 for about an hour. Prox. And you were able to, nobody used to approach the Rebbe. Almost nobody ever approached the Rebbe. If you wanted to talk to the Rebbe, you went to Yechidus. You made an appointment, months. If you could write a zettel to the Rebbe, the Rebbe would answer, but not approaching the Rebbe. The only people who would stand was when the Rebbe used to go out of Mincha or Maidiv, people who are traveling, they would stand in the hallway, and the Rebbe would pass by them. If people were standing there, that means that people are traveling. So the Rebbe would say to everybody, Fort Gesundheit und mir soll Herren Psuras Tevis. travel safely and wish you good news. If it was people from France, the Rebbe would say, bon voyage and bon nouvelle. Anyways, so we decided the Rebbe is going to go home soon, about 5:30. So we stood on the sidewalk, between the last steps and the car. We stood. Was my mother? My father didn't come with us. My mother and the six of us. My youngest brother wasn't born yet. My brother Yossi was only 6 months old, so I was the only boy from the crew. I had 4 sisters, but I was the only boy. And I had the Tanya in a plastic. We saw the Rebbe's light go out, so we knew the Rebbe's coming out. The Rebbe walked out of 770. There's a light on top of the door. The Rebbe came out. It was the first time that I saw. I mean, I saw pictures, but the Rebbe was literally shining, because the light and it's dark. The Rebbe came down, came to us. The Rebbe stopped. We all said the bracha of Shechiyanu in unison. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam Shechiyanu v'kimanu v'giyonu zman hazeh. The Rebbe answered Amen. And then I went over to the Rebbe and gave the Tanya. The Rebbe took it. It was in a clear plastic. The Rebbe saw it. It was like, the Rebbe didn't say anything, but the Rebbe did say, Adaink. But, strong, Adaink, And the Rebbe went to the car, and that was that. The following Shabbos, there was Verbringen. It was Yitzchak Kislev, and then there was a Verbringen. Now, the whole 770 was then a quarter of what it is today. It was still the first shul, till the first beam. And the Rebbe's table was twice this table, not much more. And the place was packed. I was a little kid. The Rebbe stood geholfen. At the end of the Rebbe's table on the right side, the Rashag sat, the Rebbe's brother-in-law. My Zaidi used to stand behind the Rashag. So my cousin brought me a milk box.
Your father wasn't there?
No. My father wasn't there for that whole trip. We were there for 2 months. And brought me a milk box, and he put it right behind the Rashag's chair, and that was my place. For Fabrengens, that's where I stood. All of a sudden, in the middle of one of the... And for me, Bechlal, this whole Fabrengen was Gan Eden. Because at that time, there were only 3 records of Nechayach. So that's the only stuff that I heard, basically. the Nigunim. In Milan, you had 4 or 5 beers. So how often did I hear people singing Nigunim, But, by my Shabbos table, this, that, but... And then they used to have Fabrengens once in a while, but it wasn't. And here, I have hundreds, thousands of people singing the songs that I know. Anyways, all of a sudden, in the middle of one of the Nigunim, I see that people are starting to look in this direction. And I was trying to figure out, but in Nigunim, I was singing and dancing. I loved it. But if the shlichus, I spoke Yiddish, but I didn't understand the shlichus. I was a little kid. And all of a sudden, I see everybody's looking in this direction. I felt it. And then all of a sudden, the Rebbe is also looking in this direction with a smile. Then the people down here, Rabbi Eildert, so one of them tells me, gay, the Rebbe is calling you, the Rebbe Ruvdir. So I went, the Rebbe took a piece of cake, gave me a piece of cake, and I went back to my place. Years later, I looked at the Fabrengen, and I saw that the Rebbe said then that there were 2 major milestones reached this Yitzchak Kislev in Teira Sachsidis. And the first one is that the Tanya was printed in Italian. The Rebbe discussed the whole thing, that and then the first we have to refine Esav, and then where's Esav? Says Rashi in Chumash that when Yitzchak blessed Esav, told him, you're going to have the fattest of the lands. What is that? Says Rashi, Zu Italia Shel Yovan. Italy, clear. So the Rebbe says, we're taking now the Sprach of Esav, and we are mevared it to Italian. That was a whole sikha then. Many years later, when the Igros Kodesh came out, the letters from the Rebbe sent a Tanya in Italian to Shazar, the president of Israel. He doesn't speak Italian, but the Rebbe explains to him that in the pasuk it says when the Rivka was pregnant that they were fighting. It says when Keshazek comes, they're neufel. Right? When Esav is above, Yaakov falls down. And so during the time of Golus, Esav is on top. Mashiach it coming, Yaakov will be on top. So the Rebbe says, now we're taking Esav and look in the letter. That's a very geschmacka letter. So...
Hemshech to that, the Rebbe gave you the...
I'm making 1 + 1 = 2. It was that Fabrengen, and the Rebbe said that, so I would assume that that's what it was. That was one thing. Kislev. Now comes Chanukah. So I davened every single mincha ma'ariv with the Rebbe, upstairs with the Rebbe was davening in the small zal. It was very noticeable because I was right there, right after the Rebbe's table. And one time I walked out after ma'ariv, it was Chanukah. I walked out after the Rebbe left. And mitamol, I see that there's somebody, I see that from the back, I didn't realize it was the Rebbe. And my mother was in the hallway and she was like looking down. I saw the Rebbe was pulling out from his back pocket here silver dollars for Chanukah geld. Give me a second here. This is a silver dollar that I got from the Rebbe. Chanukah Tav Shin Chav Ches.
Did I give out?
This is the letter when I was 4 years old. This is when I was 6. This is when I was 9. So that was that Chanukah. So I got Chanukah geld, which was also at that time, because the Rebbe used to give to the Bachrim, but then the Rebbe stopped. It's a long story. But anyways, I got Chanukah geld then. Then there was one time that we spent a lot of time in Pittsburgh by my Bobby and Zaidi.
What happened to you? You had die Chiddush then?
Wait. Nog niet geëindigd. And we decided we were going to Pittsburgh. Now, our flight was supposed to leave, I think, around 5 o'clock. But we didn't want to miss Mincha. Now, the Rebbe used to come out to Mincha 3:15 generally. But sometimes the Rebbe would come out 3:20, 3:25. And sometimes Rabbi Groner would come out and say the Rebbe said he's going to come out 10 minutes later, Now, we had to leave 770 at 3:30 on the dot in order to catch the flight in LaGuardia to go to Pittsburgh. Whoever was driving us, I don't remember, told us we have to leave at 3:30. So I figured this time I won't go inside for Mincha. I'll stay, because to go outside in the middle is going to be hard for me, between all the Bakrim. We'll stand outside in the hallway. If the Rebbe will come into Mincha anytime before 3:30, at least we'll see the Rebbe go into Mincha, right? And then we'll take off to the airport. So we're standing there in the hallway. Helf the Rebbe. The Rebbe walked out at 3:15. But it was too late for me to go into the Zal already. If I would have been inside, I could have stayed until the end of Mincha, and I may still make it out by 3:30, because Mincha used to take about 10 minutes. So I was outside in the hallway. The Rebbe walked out from his room, and he saw me standing there. But the Rebbe didn't say anything. Continue going into the Zal. But I remembered that the Bochrim were shushking, because the Rebbe looked something, okay. The Rebbe came out. We were still standing there, because it was, and we had another 2-3 minutes. The Rebbe walked out. He saw me standing there. He stopped right by the elevator. The Rebbe called me over. The Rebbe asked me, "Far was hast du nicht gedammt Mincha mit mein Minyan? Why didn't you daven Mincha with my Minyan?" Some people said over there, the Rebbe said, the Rebbe's Minyan. I don't know. I think the Rebbe said. But I remember clearly what it looked like. The Rebbe asked me, "Far was hast du nicht gedammt Mincha mit mein Minyan?" That was that. So I'm saying that's how the relationship. We left Yud Gimel Shvat back to New York, to Milan. Came here to Kislev to Yud Gimel Shvat. Yud Gimel Shvat was on a Tuesday. Yud Shvat that year was Friday Shabbos, because I remember Friday night, everybody prepared like there's going to be a Maimer, because Tavshich Dalet, there was a Basiligani on Friday night.
Like you described by the previous
Rebbe
Rebbe,
Rashab,
like a governor.
But Lepoil, the Rebbe walked in, and the Rebbe, so they told the Rebbe that they thought there's going to be a Maimer. The Rebbe said, no, tomorrow. Anyway, but I remember that Yud Shvat clearly. We were standing outside. Mincha was going to be at 3:15. Yud Gimel Shvat, so we figured let's come to Mincha. So we came about 2:45. The Rebbe talked to this one, talked to that one. We were going back to Italy for my mother. She wasn't here already in 7 years, and who knows next time when she's going to come back. As we were talking to some people there, Rabbi Chadakov happened to pass by, the Rebbe's secretary, number one secretary. He happened to pass by and went to the Rebbe's room for something, like he used to do during the day. He came out, and he said these words, "The Rebbe will sehen Mishpachas Garelik auf Yechidus jetzt." The Rebbe wants we should go into Yechidus right now.
You were scheduled to go a different time.
No, we were going back to Italy that day. My mother went when we came, right away.
She had Yechidus.
She had it. What happened was, she came, and the first Yechidus night after we came, the Rebbe asked Rabbi Chadukov, why didn't my mother go in that night? Rabbi Chadukov said, because it wasn't prepared. So she went the next night, or whatever. So she went to Yechidus then. But now the Rebbe wanted to see the whole family, because at that time, my little ones had gone to Pittsburgh already. They stayed there most of the time. Anyways, so we went into Yechidus. When we came in, you were able to see that Rebbe was waiting for us. The table was clear. There was nothing on the table. Yeah, the telephone, 2, 3 little things, but I'm saying, and the Rebbe was sitting with his hat, mamash. We went in. The Rebbe spoke to my mother for a while. I don't know how long. And later I found out it was mostly about me. They didn't want to know who's my Melamed, what do I learn, how they're managing, but, all kinds of stuff. Then the Rebbe spoke to her a bunch of other things. Then the Rebbe spoke to my older sister. Then the Rebbe turned to me. And the Rebbe asked me, "Was ist dein Name? What is your name?" So I said, Levi Yitzchak. Was lernst du? What do you learn? So I said, Chumash. Welke Chumash? Which Chumash? Bereshis. Welke Parsha? Told us. Was mean told us? What does told us mean? I said, the Kinder, the children. Wem is Kinder? Whose children? Yitzchak's. Wer is given Yitzchak's tate? Who was Yitzchak's father? But it took a while, everything with a smile, very, Wer given Yitzchak's tate? Avram. Wer given Yitzchak's Kinder? Who were Yitzchak's children? Yaakov and Esav. Then the Rebbe asked, wer is given mer Frum? Now, I spoke Yiddish, a good Yiddish, but the word Frum I never heard. For whatever reason, I don't know if in Italy they don't use it, I don't know, but I never heard the word Frum. So I turned to my mother, and to my mother I talked to her in Italian. So I told her, non capisco quella parola. I don't understand that word. But my mother was standing like this, verstehst du? I reminded myself, Lazar's, the oldest daughter, I told you she's my age, she one time told me, don't ask me where she heard, that the Rebbe speaks Italian. So I reminded me, where she knows from, I have no idea. But she told me, the Rebbe speaks Italian. Later I found that out on my own. That's another whole story. I had stuff. But, so I turned, looking back at the Rebbe, I figured, wait a second, the Rebbe speaks Italian, right? He heard what I asked my mother, right? I looked back at the Rebbe, and the Rebbe with a big smile, the Rebbe says, wer ist gewesen mehr gut? So I said, Yaakov. In other words, the Rebbe understood what my issue was, that Yaakov. So the Rebbe said, no, ei bazei lam me reden wegen Yaakov. That's the case, let's talk about Yaakov. Then the Rebbe asked, weißt du, Yaakov hat gehabt Kinder? Do you know if Yaakov had any children? She said, yep. I had a mazel. When I came that trip, Italian kid, my cousins, my uncles, everybody went crazy, because the first time they see us. I got so many presents. And about 2 weeks before, I got a present, a puzzle of the 12 Shvatim. So I knew. So the Rebbe asked me, weißt du, Yaakov hat gehabt Kinder? Because it's the next parsha, parsha 12, Vayetze. So I said, yep. So the Rebbe said, weißt du Zeir and Emen? Do you know their names? I said, yep. So the Rebbe says, fang an sagen, start saying. So I said, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Dan, Naphtali. The Rebbe raised his hand. I'll never forget that. Genug. Enough. I said, okay. The Rebbe asked, was gewend the name von der Dritter? What was the name of the third son? So I said, Levi. Was is dein Name? What is your name? Levi. The next question, I am 99% certain that the words were, wie stimmt es? Like, who's Levi here? Something like that. At that time, I don't know. I knew I just have to. There's no wasting time. Yeah. So I told the Rebbe steht beschaffen 2 Levis. The Rebbe created 2 Levis. I was 7 years old. Okay.
Wie stimmt es that you're Levi and
that Levi, do Levi, like something like whatever. So I said the Rebbe steht beschaffen 2 Levis. Okay. Then the Rebbe, not serious, but like a more, like a more I'll never forget that. And the Rebbe says, "Und nach wem bist du angenommen? Who are you named after?" I was thinking, how do I do it? In Italian, I knew how to say yours to a king. I knew. But in Yiddish, I had no clue. How are you supposed to say in Yiddish to a king? Your deine, seine. What are you supposed to do? And to say to the Rebbe's tate, I also didn't want. I don't want to say the Rebbe in front of the Rebbe, but I decided I'm not taking any chances. And I said, the Rebbe's tate. When I said the Rebbe's tate, the Rebbe gave me a big smile. And he gave me this siddur. This is the siddur I got. Yud Gimel Shvat Tavshin Chav Ches.
Israeli siddur.
The Israeli siddur, which has everything in here, right? Tehillim and actually I give it to a lot of kalas to daven on the day of the wedding, whatever. But this is what the Rebbe gave me then in Yechidus. So he asked before about the Yechidus. This was the Yechidus. But I remember going into daven mincha after that with this siddur. And I remember we came into the Zal, everybody was waiting for mincha. We were there for at least a half hour because it was way after 3:15. And I remember I was davening with everybody, was talking about the siddur, you know.
So you went back to Milan, and what were the subsequent visits by the Rebbe as a child?
So after that, I came to the Rebbe when I was 10 and a half. I came in Tafshin Lamed Beis, 1972, Tishrei. I was going to be here for the whole Tishrei, but my cousin wasn't where I was supposed to stay, wasn't feeling well. So I was in Pittsburgh for the first, till the Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur and the first days of Sukkot. And I was here for Simchas Torah. But at that half a year, I learned in Pittsburgh. So I came in for Yutas Kislev, I came for Yud Shvat, I came in for Purim, I came in for Yud Aleph Nissen. So I was here Yud Aleph Nissen, Tavshel Lamed Beis, Shnasa Shivim, which was special. That whole year, while we were, there was only just one time I came back to New York because my mother came and we went into Yechidus then. My sister became Bas Mitzvah then, I turned 11. I'll never forget how we walked out of Yechidus. So then I saw the Rebbe secretary, Rabbi Klein, who later became my father-in-law. But he told us that he has a letter from my sister for the Bas Mitzvah. And I asked him, where's my letter? I used to get letters from the Rebbe for my birthdays. I got 3-4 of them. He says, no, you were in Yechidus. I said, my sister was also in Yechidus. He says, yeah, but she became Bas Mitzvah. I said, and I became 11. So I remember I started crying like a baby. How come I didn't get a letter? And he started explaining to me as much as he was trying to, you went to Yechidus. It's, I think the Rebbe told us then to go to the oil. Remember the Rebbe told us once to go to the oil. I remember we went there, it was snowing. Like those days, people hardly, we only went to Shvat, we went there. Then was Yud Aleph Nissen Shnasa Shivim. Then the following year, I came again for a month. I was in New York for a month, from Purim till Pesach. Then in the summer of Lamed Gimel, that's when I came to stay. I came to Gan Yisrael, and then I went to Old Torah, then to Ocean Parkway, etc. That first year, Tavshel Lamed Daled, right after my bar mitzvah, there's a whole story with my bar mitzvah, but I'll get back to it. No, let me start with bar mitzvah. My bar mitzvah was in Cheshvan. Now, the boys of my class at that time, Old Torah, they went to Yechidus with the bar mitzvah. The Rebbe did not verhear them in the Pilpul, the Maimer. The Rebbe used to verhear the boys in the Pilpul, the Maimer. But my class, they said that the Rebbe didn't. So I wasn't worried, when I went to Yechidus. Now, that whole summer in camp, I learned with Rapinya Korf the shlichus, what my Pilpul is going to be based on. Famous, there's in Chelik Vav, there's a whole thing, the questions that he asked the Rebbe about Miftzat Tefillin, 4 questions and answers. Yeah. So that's sicher, and there is sicher in Chelik Tes, about Bnei Gad, Bnei Reuven, whatever. So I knew the concept. My father came from Italy on a Sunday afternoon. Bar mitzvah was Monday. Sunday night, we went into Yechidus, because Yechidus would be Sunday and Thursday. So I went into Yechidus the night of my bar mitzvah. The next morning, I got an aliyah by the Rebbe. And for Shabbos, we went to Milan. That's what the whole big bar mitzvah was. And I came back to the Rebbe for Yutas Kislev to go to yeshiva. We went to Yechidus. First of all, those days, one of the toughest things was you had to give to the Rebbe a zettel from Dan Holle in a sealed envelope. And, Bochum and Hollis don't always see eye to eye. And Bochum had no clue what Dan Holle wrote to the Rebbe, but it had to be a sealed envelope. There's nothing you could do. Anyway, so that was my first thing. I had to give the Rebbe the zettel. And I was only 12, but I had my issues with Dan Holle. And the Rebbe looked at it and didn't say anything. Then the Rebbe said, seemingly my father, on the, he prepared a pilpul for me, about 5-6 pages, and seemingly he sent to the Rebbe a copy. I didn't know. I had just read it quickly before we went here, just to see what, because that was the only time I could see the pilpul, and I had to say it on Shabbos. We went here, and the Rebbe said, since I got a copy of what you're going to be saying, Efshe kannst du übersagen an Nekude, von was du gehst reden. Maybe you could say a point of what you're going to say. Those days there was only one mitzvah tefillin. All the mitzvahim started in 1974 in the summer. This was in the winter. It was only mitzvah tefillin since 1967 from the war. So I told the Rebbe that I'm going to be speaking about why the Rebbe chose the mitzvah of tefillin, because there was a war. And the pasuk says, "V'ro kol ha'amei ha'aretz kishem Hashem nikra lecha v'yoru mimeka." When the nations of the world will see the Rebbe's name on your forehead, v'yoru mimeka, they'll fear you. Says the Gemara, "Elu tefillin sheberash." This goes in the tefillin. That's why I gave like a whole. The Rebbe looks up and says, "Hast verenter de shel rosh and was mit shel yad." You only answered why you have to wear the tefillin on the head, but what about on the hand? So I said, well, there's another pasuk, "V'tar av zraya afkot." That the Bnei Gad, Bnei Reuven, they were the pioneers that went into Eretz Yisrael. The bracha that they got from Moshe Rabbeinu was V'tar av zraya afkot, that when they used to go to war, they used to chop off the hand and the head of the enemy with one shot. So it says in the Mefarshim that b'schus the mitzvah of tefillin on the hand and the head, that they were able to do that. So I told the Rebbe that that's also for the hand. The Rebbe gave me a bracha. Then, fartik, I went to Italy. Came back for Yutas Kislev a month later. Came back for Yutas Kislev. By the Fabrengen Shabbos after Yutas Kislev, after the Rashi Sicha, all of a sudden the Rebbe tells Rabbi Groner to pull out a bottle of mashke from under the table. Okay? The Rebbe takes the bottle, and the Rebbe calls out, "Der bar mitzvah from Milan." I was thinking, is it me? My bar mitzvah was a month ago. I'm done. So I didn't go. I thought maybe there's somebody, I don't know, weiß nicht. So Rabbi Groner, he was standing next to the Rebbe, he sees me, he said, okay. So I came up, but I had no cup, I wasn't ready. Usually, Rabbi Groner used to have in his pocket cups. He had no cups. There's no cups. All of a sudden, the Rebbe is standing there with the bottle. I'm standing there. I'm waiting for nicht a cup. The Rebbe took the cap of the bottle, the Rebbe put a mashke in the cap, and he gave me the cap. I drank it, and I turned red like a burik, because it was the first time in my life that. So the Rebbe took a piece of cake, he gave me a second piece, a third piece, to relax me, whatever. And then the Rebbe closed the bottle, and the Rebbe said, "Sollst teilen a bissel da, und die Iberike in Milan." You should give out a little here and the rest in Milan. This was Yutas Kislev. So the next day I wrote into the Rebbe that I came to go to yeshiva. But if the Rebbe wants to go back to Milan, I'll go back tonight. No. So the Rebbe answered like this. I don't remember the exact lashon. I have it written somewhere. That what he said to give out a little here is because of Meichin. You're not allowed to prepare from Shabbos for after Shabbos. So the Rebbe couldn't give me just to give out in Milan. So that's what the Rebbe said, I should give some here and the rest in Milan. I wrote to the Rebbe that I was planning to come here till Pesach, and the Rebbe said, when I'll go back for Pesach, that's when I should give it out. So I don't have to go back special. Fine. Now put the story on the side. Comes Pesach, Yud Aleph Nissen, That year, Yud Aleph Nisan was on a Wednesday. Farbrengen was going to be Wednesday night. If I want to go to Italy for Pesach, it's Thursday night because the flights didn't go only at night, and they come there. That year was Erev Pesach Shechol Yuz b'Shabbos. It's Erev Pesach is Shabbos. So I'm going to get there when? Friday afternoon. Now Friday afternoon, and I still have a bottle of mashke that I have to go. I'm not even going to be in shul for Shacharis because I'm just arriving 11, 12 o'clock. It's Erev Pesach. So I was thinking, I should go Wednesday night. Mr. Farbrengen, but I have to give that the mashke. I was like stuck in a couple of days before, and I didn't know what to do. Half the Rebbe, my mother came for Yud Aleph Nisan. But she was planning to leave before the Farbrengen to get there Thursday. Came Yud Aleph Nisan in the morning, that Wednesday morning, and the Rebbe came from his house. It was a beautiful, bright day. Now, the people didn't stand around the Rebbe. Later years, people started standing. When the Rebbe came, there was nobody in sight. So we were almost by the corner of Kingston Avenue. We watched the Rebbe go out of his car. Fartik, when the Rebbe went to 770, so we went towards 770. As we come towards 770, Rabbi Klein comes out. He sees us, and he goes like this, and he asks us, did you see the Rebbe? I said, yeah. Did the Rebbe see you? I said, I have no idea. Well, he saw you, and he wants to see you again. He tells my mother and myself, going to Gan Eden Tachten. Okay, we went to Gan Eden Tachten. The Rebbe came out from his room with a pack of Agodas. That was the first year that came out a Haggadah hardbound. Now the Haggadah is like this. But those days it was like this. So you had the Haggadah, which was thin, like a booklet, like all the...
You're talking about the Rebbe's Haggadah?
The Rebbe's Haggadah.
Yeah.
So you had the Kontreisim, like, till Tashlamid Gimel. Then there was this first bound one. The Rebbe had a bunch of bound ones and a bunch of Kontreisim. And here, the Rebbe had Michtavim Klolim. This is how the Rebbe came out, like this. The Rebbe gave my mother a thick Haggadah. Then the Rebbe gave for my father, and my father wasn't there, a thick Haggadah for my father. Then the Rebbe asked me, do Shem Bar Mitzvah? I was thinking, Rebbeinu Shalom. The Rebbe even gave him mashke. But the Rebbe asked, do Shem Bar Mitzvah? I didn't answer, of course. And the Rebbe gave me a thick Haggadah. Then the Rebbe asked me, dein ältere Schwester ist in Bas Mitzvah? Your older sister is in Bas Mitzvah? Of course I didn't. And the Rebbe gave it to me or to my mother. I remember he asked me, dein ältere Schwester ist in Bas Mitzvah? Then there was only thin ones left. The Rebbe told my mother she should say the names of the next children, and he's going to give Haggadah for each one. And so the next one is Sasha. She was 11 on the Bas Mitzvah. The Rebbe took each Haggadah. The Rebbe looked like this. No, the Haggadah is like this, like this, like this. Das ist for Sasha. Next one, Sterne Sarah. The Rebbe looked like this, like this, like this. Das ist for Sterne Sarah. All of the Haggadahs. Then there was one left. Once the Rebbe gave for all the children, there's one left. The Rebbe took out the Michtavim Klalim. The Rebbe gave one to my mother in Yiddish. Then the Rebbe gave one in English. Then the Rebbe said, "Me soll es übertauschen auf Italienisch." Then the Rebbe gave for my father a Michtav Klali in Yiddish. And the Rebbe said, that English darf nicht haben. English one he doesn't need. Then the Rebbe gave me a Michtav Klali, and he gave for my sister. Then there was one Haggadah left. I was dying who is this one for? And as soon as that happened, the Rebbe said, und die Haggadah soll man geben Daniels. There was a Jew in Italy, Rebbe Daniel Daniels. As a matter of fact, I see on the WhatsApps, they would send out all the shlichus, so they have a picture of Yud Aleph Nisan Tav Shalamed Beis. If you look on the Rebbe's right, there's a guy with a mustache. That's Mr. Daniels. Not gonna go, it's a whole long story who Mr. Daniels is. So the Rebbe said to give it to him. Fartig. Then the Rebbe asked my mother something private. That was it. Fartig. And then we went to Maskiris. Started writing into each Haggadah who it belongs to, As we're doing that, mitamol, zzz, when the Rebbe used to buzz from his room to Maskiris, it was like a zzz, So Rabbi Klein picks up the phone. The Rebbe wants we should come back. So we took the whole thing back. We went back to Gan Eden and the Rebbe was there waiting. And the Rebbe asked back for the one for Daniels. which was a thin one, and the Rebbe gave a thick one.
Ah.
And the Rebbe said, is das wert. He deserves it. Fine. That was that. We went back into... By the way, you know that Yud Aleph Nissen, the Rebbe said one time, a day of his Beidudus, don't talk to anybody. Baruch Hashem, we got 2 Yechidus. Anyways, went back at the Maskiris, the right weiter, and all of a sudden, zzz, again the Rebbe is calling. So, we waited, and the Rebbe spoke a minimum of 3-4 minutes. He was talking, and Rabbi Klein was listening, and the Rebbe is talking. Finally, he closed, so he says, no, you don't have to go back. The story is as follows. The thick Haggadah, right, what is it? In the beginning, they have the Haggadah with the Rebbe's Ha'aris. Then later, they added shlichus and letters. The last thing in the Haggadah is the Siyum on Masechta Psachim, which is printed in Likutei Sichos Chelik Yud Aleph, the end of the Masechta. The last words, mamish, on the bottom, the Siyum of it talks about Shechiyanu, Pidyon Ben, Bris Milah. So the end mamish is that what's the reason why we don't say Shechiyanu by a Bris Milah? Mishum tzara diyanuka, because of the tzar of the baby. When the Rebbe received the Haggadah that the Vad printed, the Rebbe said it's no good, because a sefer has to finish with something good.
Simon B'Toiv.
And here you finished off with something bad. Now, they already had printed the Haggadah. They didn't know what to do. Now, there's 2 versions to the story. I'm going to tell you the version the way I remember it from then, and then how I heard this year, a different version, but I'll still stick to mine. So what I heard then was that the Rebbe told the Vad that they have to figure out what to do. So they asked the Rebbe, what should they do? The Rebbe said they should make a stamp with something there, and this way, it'll be finished. So at least then I heard that the Vad decided to put Lashon Haba B'Yerushalayim. Here they are, not over there. You have to learn all the things. That's Lashon Haba B'Yerushalayim. So the Rebbe basically told Rabbi Klein that I should go upstairs to the Vad, because these Haggadahs that the Rebbe have doesn't have the Lashon Haba B'Yerushalayim. So therefore I should go upstairs. But the Rebbe told my Rabbi Klein the whole story, that how they printed, and it was you have to Messiah B'Dover Tev. So I went upstairs to the Vad. I remember I walked into Rabbi Oltein, Rabbi Shapiro, Zalman Chanin was there, and Mitamol, and Shalom Jacobson. And I told them I was by the Rebbe now, and the Rebbe gave us Haggadahs, and they were so happy because this was the first time they heard some back from the Rebbe about the stamp. This year I heard a version that they decided to put Lashon Haba B'Yerushalayim. At that time I heard that the Rebbe said, but whatever. Bottom line is that's what it was. So, once I got the Haggadah and those, I already went back Wednesday night, and I missed the upbringing of Yud Aleph Nissen Tafshel Lamed Dalet, but the Raila gave out the mashke, etc.
Right.
So that was a hemshech to my bar mitzvah.
Okay, so in the questions that I prepared, we didn't get to a lot of them still. So I should have anticipated this before. So I think what we're going to do is, Bli Neder, we're going to have to do a part 2 to this.
2, 3, 4. Whatever it'll take, yes. With pleasure.
If we go backwards, we can, with your father, we could do a few podcasts. But at least what I have on my reshim of questions, Be'ezus Hashem, Bli Neder, for the listeners, we'll do a part 2.
And Be'ezus Hashem Mashiach will be here before that, so Lashon Haba B'Yerushalayim.
Amen.
As the Rebbe said, L'sayim B'Dover Tev.
Amen. Okay, thank you very much.
Pleasure.